Hello, welcome back to the bottom. My name is Beast, and now back with Eru-Route. Anyways, I don't know why I did that. I'm not gonna mess around too much. Let's just get into it. The Twilight dorm was away from the school building, but it wasn't all that far. However, walking the distance felt particularly hot that morning.
それでですね、思いっきり煽ってやったんですよ。もっけんちゅう。かまぼこいたかよ。ポコ、ポコ。すぐ黒ずむーって。
ふむ。
どう考えても時代は鉄筋。必殺技みたいな名前がかっこいいグロッケンシュピール。木金とは格の違いが現れてますね。
ふむ。
It was Eru's fault. Since last night, she just wouldn't let go of me. We even went to the shower together, so controlling myself proved rather difficult, albeit only slightly. There was a hint of caution in her behavior. It might have had something to do with the fact that the memories of last night were incomplete. It was hard for me to move as we are. Oh, and I felt extremely hot too. Worst thing about it, though, was that I kind of enjoyed it. Students passing by looked at us like a father and daughter playing at the park. Some of them glared daggers as though to say, a beast like you should just die. As Eru clung to me, I patted her head, enjoying the softness. The chime signaling the start of our lectures rang out. Sakura just like sees them walk in the class and was like, what the fuck's going on? I just gives her a look that screams, just don't fucking ask questions and help me. It was first lecture. Mr. Shishka entered the room and did something on the educational layer to present new AR information on our RI. The advanced lesson was no different from the usual, but there was an invisible cloud hanging above us. Eru had sat down to my right. I looked to my left and felt my brow furrow. Sakura wasn't there. The lack of the insignia, who'd never missed lectures, created ripples throughout the classroom. Everyone looked at each other in confusion.
講義の前に皆さんに報告することがあります。
Another abnormality. Those words caused a true stir. Mr. Shishka didn't seem like his usual self. He wasn't wearing the fake smile I knew him for. It seemed like he was trying to hide his fear. His face remained expressionless, yet was marred with tension. An ominous feeling overwhelmed me. Shinigami knew that there was no point in praying to anyone at a time like that.
昨夜、スクールの学生1名が亡くなりました。
I heard Eru gasp. They gathered the students in the gymnasium to explain the events of the previous night. I looked at my fellow étoiles. Tamo and Taigi were there, while Soraka was still hospitalized. Only one actually missing, Saku. Eru's face had paled. She clung to my left arm tightly. Never seen her so emotional before.
犯人を追っていて。
それほど不用意ではないよ。まだ何も分かっていないのだ。過剰に不安になることはない。
Gently touched her as I waited to hear more details. It's the girl. It's the other girl. It's gonna be the other girl, I feel.
すでに通達は言っているだろうと思う。昨夜、栄誉ある本校学生1名が不測の事態で失われた。
Oh, he said Saku though. So it's
死亡したのは鍵石義雄。スクールの学生諸君、同胞の死に黙祷を捧げよう。
After his heavy voice echoed through the gymnasium, a girl a few rows ahead of us collapsed and shook. Students started making a ruckus while the teachers ran up to her, disturbing the moment of
あれは
silence.
確か。
I recalled that the collapsed maiden's name was Mizukura, meaning that the one who died was the person she knew. The guy who picked a fight with me.
サクじゃなかった。
Eru's mutter conveyed relief. I did feel bad for him, but we were indeed glad that it wasn't
だ
Sakura.
が
鍵石君は学園内で亡くなりました。死因は急性の心不全と思われます。明日学葬を行いますので全員参加するように。
Mr. Shishkai replaced Kurofune and told us to disperse. Heart failure, hey? Seems like a cover-up to me. They were probably trying to protect the minds of all the sensitive HMIs. My eyes met Eru's. I didn't see anything in her expression, but I knew what she wanted to say. After closing our eyes one last time and paying respect, we left the gymnasium.
どうかしたのですか？
別にどうということもないとも。朝から何とも陰惨な話だと思っただけだよ。
Apparently she'd noticed the look of worry on
成
my
田
face.
様、高崎様、
Oops. We were called to a stop by one of Taigi's maids.
お連れしました。
Chairman's office. Kurofune Mikudo sat behind the mahogany desk, silently observing a picture on the wall. Slowly but surely he turned to face me. The picture, by the way, appeared to be a copy of the Pioneer Plague. The originals were carried with the Pioneer 10 and 11 spacecraft, launched in the years 1972 and 1973 respectively. The plaque contained drawings of man's form, as well as a map leading to Earth, meant to be found by extraterrestrial life. It represented an unfulfilled dream.
よく来た諸君。
Kurofune looked at us. Like before, he welcomed us with confidence and certainty. Big shots like him generally refused to meet their guests' eyes as they got comfortable on a sofa, but he gave us a polite bow instead. This man had no need to show off.
おとなし作は不在か？
Tamo and Taigi were already there, with Eru and myself joining. Only two étoiles were missing. Soroku was hospitalized in Sakura.
サクは今日は病欠なのです。
いいだろう。
Kurofune ignored Eru's awkward excuse and started talking.
先ほどの件についてだ。鍵石義雄は死因を心不全と発表したが、実際にはそうではない。
なるほど。時の先生も不在の今は可能な限り心理的安定を保つのが必須ですからね。混乱を避けるための予防措置というところですか。
鍵石義雄は何者かに殺害された。
それで
本題に入る。
I urged him to hurry up, and he quickly did so without expressing even a hint of displeasure. Only Tamo seemed shocked by my actions. Eru was Eru, but even Taigi didn't look surprised.
彼が殺害されたのは奥島の市内だ。
外出許可取ってたってことか。一体何しに出て行ったんだ？
申請によれば身内の式典に出席するためとある。
その彼は奥島の出身だったのかね？
稲だ。
じゃあなんで奥島にいたんだよ。飛行機待っててやられたとか？
詳細は現在調査中だ。必要な資料ができ次第引き渡す。諸君も知る通り、天川ノーブルスクールは HMI が集められた学園だ。鍵石義雄も高グレードのヒストリス HMI だ。これは単なる異常者の犯行ではない。
犯人も HMI ということか。
あるいは
You have agreed with my assumption. You knew well that HMEs weren't the only ones who could kill HMIs.
状況的に見て
HMEs? Did I just say HMEs?
犯人が HMI である可能性は高い。何者かがスクールに敵対している。
Instead of continuing his speech, he prioritized my question. It was a smooth exchange, but I felt he'd read my thoughts, which upsets me.
草芝耐え。
消息不明中のスライダーですか？
犯人が HMI だとして現時点でスクールの管理下にない者は当然有力な容疑者だろうね。
Sliders were intelligent, but their lack of control made them act very spontaneously. She managed to hide without causing any disturbance. Tai Sashiba was quite an exception.
事件は内々に処理しなければならない。HMI とは可能性だ。ノーブルたるものの種だ。大衆はそれを理解できない。事態が拡大し、ことが公になれば、HMI を現状以上に危険視する。断じて食い止めなければならない。ノーブルとは、人類の最先端だ。君臨するものではない。先頭に立つものだ。自ら率先して危険に立ち向かい、打倒する意志と力あるものだ。
つまり我々に犯人狩りをせよと。
そうだ。諸君らだけではない。スクールの学生は残らず動員される。だが彼らの力は未完成だ。これ以上の犠牲は出せない。事態収拾までの間、エトワールには出席義務の解除と無制限の外出許可を与える。
Oscar, this is probably like prime fucking real estate for nutty times. Like, fuck yeah. Well, don't have to sneak now.
ノーブル足らんとする者らよ。自らの手で、自らの敵を打ち破れ。
As we started filing out of the office,
成田真理、話がある。
it's gonna be a case of Kurofune at this point has guessed who he is, and it's just like, listen, you can murder me after this is done. For now, we need to take care of this shit. Kurofune Mikoto told me to stay. Tamo looked at me in an attempt to ask what I'd done, but I was as clueless as her. Actually, I had performed several heinous acts, but Shinri Narita's true identity should have still remained a mystery. I had actually made a fatal error without even noticing. Eru and the others walked out, leaving behind an air of puzzlement and worry. Only Kurofune and I stayed in the office. The air in it felt heavy to begin with, but having to face them all alone made it at least 10 times worse. I almost had trouble breathing. Repulsing the invisible transparent pressure emitted by his presence, I strained my whole body like a fully drawn bowstring. That was the moment my vengeance came. If that was the moment my vengeance came to an end, I was ready for it. Very life was meant for that alone.
スクールでの生活には慣れたか？
ここでは常に新たな発見がある。そしてやるべきことも。心躍る場所だ。
The adult shadow didn't seem to fit the stoic man before me, but granted me the precious time I needed to prepare. Continued to gather my strength, not letting even a single part of it leak. Felt like I was running while still. When a moment can, I would be able to run at top speed.
まだクラウンに加わるのを拒んでいるそうだな。
私には他にやるべきことがある。そしてこのスクールのやり方に賛同はできない。
この場でよくぞ言ってのける。しかしふてぶてしいほどの面構え。
どういう意味だ。世間話をするために時間を取ったのかね。
I knew that wasn't the case, but then what did my accursed enemy intend? Couldn't reach him. Why had he made me stay behind? I couldn't read him. Why had he made me stay behind?
私は頂点を手に入れる。
なんだと。
His words were so sudden that I didn't know how to react.
成田真理。この世界が正しいとお前は断言できるか？ あまたな不条理と理不尽と不理解、数えきれない悲劇、すべてはあまりに不完全だ。
その不完全さこそ世界の正しさなのだろう。
私はそれを変えてみせる。道のりは長く険しい。夜店時野の死で大きな交代を余儀なくされる成田真理。現時点ではただ一人の男性エトワール級 HMI。 私の理想を理解しろ。
Was truly a loss for words. He told Shinji Naito of all people to understand Kurofune Mikado.
到達するためにはまだまだ多くのものが必要だ。お前には私と共に歩むに足る力が。
正しき未来か。そのために頂点を手に入れると。
Barely managed to eke out those words. Felt like my throat had frozen over. My serene mind burned with rage and dizziness. One thing seemed rather evident, however.
そうだ。
He replied plainly. What I felt when I gazed at his arrogant figure wasn't fear, but hate and rage. No matter how beautiful his ideas were, he always clashed with the rage boiling within me. That was more evident than ever in that moment.
世界を征服しようとでも言うのか。随分と時代遅れなことだな。
最後の1を超えて新たな1が未来を創造する。
何の話だ。
いずれわかる。今はわからなくともお前は必ず私の理想を理解する。
必ずか。
今日のところはそれだけだ。
Oh, something was certain. And Kurofune would know it soon enough. He would know that Shinri Naito was an avenger who fulfilled his oath of vengeance at all costs.
取って食われたかと思ってたけど、生きてやがるみたいだな。
As I left the chairman's office, I found the other étoiles. They waited for me, apparently.
ああ、どうやら鬼の口には合わなかったようでね。
We traveled to the cafeteria to discuss the murder. Everyone had complex expressions on their faces.
今回の事件は AHM が後ろで糸を引いている可能性もあるね。
It was very like him to point that out. He wasn't serious about that assumption, but he still considered it a possibility. Just the right course of action.
例えば草芝田への逃走を手助けして騒ぎを起こさせ HMI の怪物性を公表するといったところかな。
めんどくせえやり口だな。
うん。AHM のメンバーに HMI はいるのだろうか。
AHM はハローを憎んでる連中です。そんなところに HM は
連中がある種の実験をしているという噂はあったよ。
横から突っ込み、その心は
HMI を制御するための実験さ。最もポピュラーなのは薬物や手術を用いたマインドコントロール。そのためにさらわれる HMI もいるらしい。
マジですか。
そういえばこの間事件があったな。
東京のやつだね。
They spoke of the murder of a family that occurred only about 2 weeks prior. Some maniac welcomed himself into the house and slaughtered the parents while the child's whereabouts remained unknown. He was officially classified as a violent burglar, but the child was an HMI who'd recently ascended. The academy didn't have the child under their wings because the parents had been hiding his HMI status. They were normal people and probably feared what would happen if their child's extraordinary abilities were exposed. Through that, the Academy was unable to retrieve the child, and a tragedy struck. The fact that even the non-HMI parents were killed made it look like an AHM lynching. Perhaps Tega was right, and their objective was to kidnap the HMI.
AHM といっても個々のメンバーを駆動している動機は様々だろう。
異端への恐怖、あるいは敵、あるいは差別。
Or perhaps hatred. The incident in Tokyo seemed truly vile, which made me believe that there was something far more intense behind it than mere rejection of the abnormal. HMIs that made their way to the Academy weren't all oppressed. HMIs, myself included, were usurpers that had extraordinary powers. Their abnormal abilities, which couldn't be restrained by society, threatened to destroy the world around them, and as such, they had caused countless tragedies as well. The land beyond the Academy's dull wall was a bloody wasteland covered in the curses of the dead and the hatred of the living. Numerous individuals swore eternal hatred for Kurofune Mikado. The Academy had students under his wing because they couldn't tolerate the fact that they'd been granted any bliss. In a way, they even had a lot in common with Shinri Narita.
マジめんどくせえよ。AHM だか逃げたスライダーだか知らねえけど、捕まえて締めりゃいいんだろ。
Tamo's motivated words brought me back to reality.
ヤンキー、マジ単純思考です。
うっせえよ。とにかくせっかくの自由行動だ。俺はしばらく一人で動く。そっちの方が面倒じゃねえしな。
さっきはああ言ったが、相手はおそらく AHM じゃない。強力な HMI だ。
俺が負けるってのか？なめてんのか？叫んなよ。雑魚にやられてクラウンのメンバーが務まるか？
信用はしているよ。だけど勇気と無謀は別だ。気をつけなければね。
任せとけ。お前らこそドジ踏むなよ。
Tamo walked off by herself before suddenly turning around and heading right back.
エル、サクのこと頼んだからな。
自分、言わなくても頼まれています。
Seems she had forgotten something. Was final satisfied? Tamo left the cafeteria for good. Forgot to bring my
僕たちはどうするかな。
jacket, not coat.
また手を借りたい。夜店時野の残した資料を洗う。
There was no telling how we were being monitored, so I chose my words carefully and kept the exchange to a minimum.
時野先生の資料から手がかりを探すのか。難しくはないのかい？
Tiger seemed to read my mind and also limited his words.
切り札になりそうなものは他にないのでね。
We had no luck yesterday, but I knew we couldn't leave the issue to anyone else.
それにスクールの全学生が動員されると決まった。人数がいれば外のチェックは速やかに終わるだろう。そちらは任せておけばいい。
成田。
Eru looked at me with a blank face. Thanks to the time we spent together, I more or less knew what she wanted to
大丈
say.
夫だ。すぐに見つかる。
そうですね。
She nodded in understanding.
では僕らも行くとしよう。
Yes, she would surely return soon.
外、覗いてくれ。
Ada pointed at the inner garden. She rarely ever raised her voice, so that was most intriguing. Curious, I checked to see what had captured her attention.
あれは。
だから何度も言ってるでしょ。風邪ひいてたの。38度はあった。天井回転してた。部屋出ようと思ったら倒れて、今起きたところよ。
私が言うことではないが、連絡くらい入れればよかったのではないかね。
電話持つのも無理だったの。針が重いくらいだった。
寮を出るときに 部屋を訪ねても反応がなかったのは？
返答できないぐらい大変だったのよ。
We found Sakura out in her garden. It was almost noon, but she was heading out to our lectures as though it was only natural.
やかましい男どもです。サクが言うことは正義なのです。
For I knew it, Ida was standing next to Sakura, all smiles.
驚いたでしょ？
全くだ。
Ida looked extremely happy. It made sense since her parents made it clear that Sakura hadn't been the victim of some dangerous incident.
どうにか動けるようになって慌てて校舎まで出てきたら誰もいなくてさらに大慌てよ。告知用のレイヤーに何があったのか情報公開されてたし、獅子会教諭から連絡用のメールも来てたから、おおよその事情は分かってる。
さすがは筆頭殿、頼もしいことだね。
ところで玉緒はもしかするとまた単独行動？スクール始まって以来の騒ぎだって時に相変わらずなんだから困った子だわ。
むしろ玉緒らしくて良いと思うよ。人はそれぞれ自分に合った行いをなすべきだ。
それよりもサク、君はどうするつもりかな？
もちろんスクールを守るためにするべきことをします。私はこのスクールの法と正義の担い手、クラウンのインシグニアですから。
She proudly puffed out her chest as she said that. Sakura Tanashi seemed the same as ever, only looking forward at all times.
でもサク、体はもう大丈夫なんですか？
状況が状況なんだから。
いや、今日のところは休養が君の仕事だ。音無サクはクラウンとしてだけではなく、このスクールの要。事態を収められるのはおそらく君だけだ。
私はもう。
私も大義に賛成しよう。
唐突に何を言ってるんですかね、この変質者は。
冤罪には断固異を唱えるが、それとは別に策が要であることは大義が言った通りだ。万全でなければならない。
二次元スキー。
実際今朝の君は倒れてしまった。
それは。
無茶をする必要はないと言っているのだよ。すでにスクールの学生全員が動員されている。今この場で君が先頭に立たなくても事態は動く。必要なのはなすべき時になすべきを果たすこと。休息し次に備えるのが今の君の仕事だ。目を丸くしているね。惚れ直したのかね。
ぶっちゃけ驚いています。成田もたまにはまともなこと言うんだな。
いや、まったく。
同感だわ。
They were also impressed that they even sighed in unison. What an unreasonable bunch.
たまには余計だ。私は常日頃からまっとうなことしか口に出していないのだから。
でもそうね、分かった。悔しいけど今日のところは寮でおとなしくしています。
もちろんそうします。
ところで妙に成田と仲がいいんだけど、何かあったの？
ラブラブです。成田がお前の平坦な胸とくびれてない腰がたまらんのや。ド列状を催したので。
ほ
う。よし、成田を埋めよう。大丈夫よ。痛いかもしれないけどほんの一瞬だから。
いや、少し待ってくれたまえ。
やっと言い訳するんですね。ひどい。
無論言い訳などしない。しかし合意の上であることを策に説明しなければならないのだよ。
She doesn't care. As for what happened next, well, I would prefer to avoid commenting on the fact that I'm calming down Sakura while sacrificing 480,500 yen's worth of the Academy's equipment. Jesus! Search for the documents that we weren't even sure existed was slow and tedious. After accompanying Sakura back to the dorm, we resumed checking Tokinoyomi's room, but we still hadn't found anything noteworthy. In fact, we didn't even know if she had set documents. As was common for geniuses, Miss Tokino didn't care about anyone else understanding her methodology.
どうしたのです？アホ丸出しの顔をして。
私も天才であるがゆえの共感と憂慮にふけっていたのだよ。
特別サービスで基地的たわごとは聞き流してあげます。
The current search involved all of the Academy students. I bent 200 HMIs, 200 halos. Proper visualization of their combined power would have been quite an impressive light show. Would the culprit really be able to hide with so many HMIs after them? Rationally, the answer was no. However, we were dealing with someone who had eluded Tokino Yomise for years, so logic did not apply. I had no evidence, but it was absolutely certain that the prior night's murder and incident 206 were somehow related.
よう思い出した。少し席を外すが後を頼む。
Time flew by. If I knew it, the sky had changed color. Twilight was a vivid red, like the color of blood. I walked through the dorm's front entrance and entered the living room. There was no need to even go to the room I'd planned to visit. Sakura was right there, and she's looking quite worrying. Seemed to have been looking outside through the window wall made of special material. She knew I'd returned. The message that somehow someone had come was displayed in the info layer the moment I passed the
お
entrance.
かえりなさい。
He didn't face me, but her voice sounded the same as ever. However, it had a somewhat mechanical creak to it as well. He slowly turned towards me. There was nothing strange in that movement, as she generally acted, but it felt somehow warped, as if her joints were akin to a broken
早
doll's.
かったのね。
忘れ物があったのでね。
忘れ物？
Twilight rays flooding in painted the living room, making it look like a sea of blood. Sakura flicked her hair back, looking utterly bored. Her flower-like beauty appeared flawless. The crimson light on her face made her look like a rose blooming within a mire of blood.
疲れているところを申し訳ないが、少し私の話を聞いてくれるかね。
らしくないのね。普段は嫌だって言っても話をするような人なのに。もしかしてそれが忘れ物？
遠回しなやりとりは好まないので率直に尋ねよう。今朝告知された事件のことだ。
鍵石義雄が死んだ？
殺された。
ああ、そうね。殺された。
She spoke my correction back to me as though annoyed.
昨日の夜、どこにいたのかね。
He's suspecting.
どうして私が学生の一人を殺す必要があるの？
She skipped part of the exchange and responded to my question with a question. Can't help but notice that she seemed utterly unaffected by the exchange. It was most bizarre.
私こそ問いたい。筆頭である君は同胞の死にどうしてそれほど平静でいられるのかと。
ノーブルたるもの、いかなる時も心乱すなかれ。そうでしょ？筆頭としては悲しみには耐えてみせないとね。
正論だな。君らしくはないが、君の本質は率直な人間だった。誰よりも強いが、強さを最初から備えていたわけではない。いわば後付けだ。王たる者が生まれつき額に星を抱いて生まれ落ちるのとは逆にね。
あなたが私の何を知っているの？成田真理。ほんの数ヶ月の付き合いで何を分かったと思い込んでたの？知っていると思っていただけじゃないの？
人は正しく分かり合うことなど到底できない生き物だよ。
ああ、そうね。分かり合えない。
Sakura could have provided a proper excuse. It would have been simple for her to get a decent reason. However, she didn't, despite my best hopes.
もっと早く君と話すべきだった。そうすれば無駄な死は避けられた。
I actually felt regret. Narita saw it as a useless, meaningless emotion, yet I couldn't help but feel it. The reason for that was very selfish too. It wasn't actually about preventing someone's death. but preventing more bloodshed than necessary.
へえ。
She suddenly lowered her tone. She'd actually done it on purpose. Sakura realized she couldn't hide it anymore. Perhaps she simply thought it was too much trouble.
サク、
ここで使っていいの？
なるほど。確かに現時点では状況証拠ばかりで決定的ではない。そして君はスクールの筆頭だ。ここでは確かによくはないな。
You purred as though licking your lips. In that moment, was I facing the real Sakura at long last? Had a violent will germinated within her? Was all that she'd done for the Academy a brief act? Was a possibility. However, Shinri had no means of seeing her past or reading her mind, so had no way of truly knowing.
否定はしないのだな。
私は楽しんでやっているの。邪魔しないでくれる？
Her eyes, reminiscent of the void of hell, warped in pleasure, and no longer felt any sense of doubt or condemnation.
私はしつこい方だ。もっと邪魔をしたらどうするかね。
No words, she merely aimed a sharp glare at me. Her red lips, which resembled a fresh wound, formed an amused smile. She opened it, her exposed teeth, which gleamed menacingly. She'd basically said, I'd like to see you try.
承知した。
そう。じゃあ、もう休んでいい？
ああ、ゆっくりと休んでくれ。願わくば、君が良くなるよ。
おやすみ、成田。
With that, she returned to her room on the second floor while I left the dorm. Things had moved from bad to worse. I had no evidence, but the impression she gave off, the instincts told me I was right. And most importantly, Sakura herself didn't deny my theory. The option I had left was to gather evidence. I should have expected that outcome. There were clues, and my senses warned me before I even found the first one. However, I still didn't want to believe Sakura was the culprit.
今さらこの私が気が重いと感じることがあるとは。
I had to tell Eru the truth. My legs felt as heavy as lead as I walked back to her. Still, I had to go. After all, I'd promised her that I would save Sakura. It was after dark, and I still returned to Tokino Yomi's compartment because it was the best place to discuss secrets.
めぼしい成果はあったかね。
おかえりしんちゃん。あれからいくつか分かったことがある。どうやら時の先生は奥島で多くの HMI が死んでいるのは何らかの人為によるもので、その犯人はスクールに潜伏していると考えていたようだ。
それらしいメモや書き取りがいくつかありました。
さすがは時の女子。
それとさっきメールが届いていたが見たかい？
まだだが内容は？
一つは鍵石義雄について。昨日の深夜市内で目撃されていた。
どうして直前だとわかる？
逃げていたからだよ。目撃の証言によると何かに追われているようだったと。追
って殺したか。狐狩りだな。ノーブルの趣味としては真っ当だ。
ここの資料で分かったが、2065事件以降に事故死した連中も死ぬ直前何かに追われていた。死に顔は皆ひどいものだった。
殺すために追ったのではなく、追って殺すのが目的だったと。
殺すためだとすればやり口が雑すぎる。意図的に追い回したとしか思えないが、意味がわからない。HMI を相手にそんな余裕は自殺行為だろ？絶対の自信か、それとも自分の死にも破綻しているか。
どちらにせよ人知れず続いてきた HMI 殺しと昨夜の何がし殺しは同じ犯人の仕業ということだな。
偶然の一致という可能性も消えたわけじゃないが。
先ほど一つと言ったが二つ目もあるのかね。
Taigi nodded as though tired and resigned.
草柴田への遺体が発見された。古町川に浮かんでいたのが見つかった。 死因は溺死だ。
2人の HMI を殺したスライダーが実は川に落ちて死んでいたというのかね。因果応報というにも無様すぎるな。
本当に草柴大が殺したなら、大が2人の HMI 候補を殺した証拠があるわけじゃない。彼女は姿を消しただけだ。
So the culprit could have killed all three. It didn't tie Kusashiba's body to distract the Academy's trackers. Surely I was being overly suspicious.
昨夜の事件の犯人は分かった。
There was no point in dragging it out any longer, so I simply revealed the truth.
犯人はサクだ。
In response, Tai closed his eyes while Eru glared at me. Felt as though time had stopped for a moment due to the silence.
何たちの悪い冗談言ってやがりますか、この野郎。言っていいことと悪いことがありますよ。
私は常日頃から言うべき時に言うべきことしか言っていないつもりだよ。
Her body failed to maintain her expressionless facade. Iru's face remained blank, but I could tell that she was mad as she approached me.
確証があるんですか？目的も動機も何もないじゃないですか。いい加減な思いつきとかなら殺す。
8割といったところだ。
That was a lie. I was fully certain. The situation and my instincts both pointed me to a single truth. A truth that was hard to swallow as a proper conclusion.
2065事件も
そうだ。
時期を考えれば、スクールに来た当初から彼女はずっとそうだったことになる。少なくとも40人近い HMI 候補と HMI をただ一人で殺害し続けてきたと。
そうだ。
Sakura Tadashi had murdered all those people. There was little point in asking why, since it had already happened. She'd spent all those years since Incident 206 meticulously planning and carrying out murders.
馬鹿げてます。推測ばかりで。
物的証拠はあると言ったら、
何ふざけてんですか。ボンボン、探偵ごっこなんてやってると閉めますよ。
詳しく聞こう。
Tiger reached into his chest pocket and pulled out a plastic case that was about half as large as a box of tobacco. It was meant for chemistry experiments and was used to collect small samples.
これは少し珍しいスギゴケ類の胞子だ。スクールには生えていない種で、1本目のサンプルは野外実証試験の時、奥島市内で採取したもの。2本目はサクの靴についた微量の土から見つけた。
そんなの野外実証試験の時に。
サクの靴から採取したのは半月ほど前だよ。
Half a month. In other words, around the time Tai Kusashiba vanished.
大輝は寮に来てからずっとそうやってこそこそ調べ回ってたんですか。
それと1本目を見つけたのは奥島市内と言ったがね。具体的には草柴大が殺したとされている2人の遺体が発見された近くだ。
そんなの。
She repeatedly tried to deny it, losing more and more certainty. Eventually, she simply fell silent, hung her head, and walked to the locker in the corner of the room. She looked dejected in the same manner as a normal girl. It wasn't like her to let sadness overwhelm her, so I had no words of comfort. To her, the truth behind the incident, the Academy's secrets meant nothing. Only Sakura mattered. What was the use of consoling her there? We had to confront Sakura, the only person Eru wished to protect.
もちろん全てが偶然だという可能性は残っているよ。
Unlikely. That's what he just said. If what he just said was true, Taigi had suspected Sakura all along. Could have easily singled her out long ago. Perhaps he wanted to bet that he was wrong, to cling to that small hope. It's true for myself as well. I wanted to believe, doing my best to ignore Eru's sorry state. I walked up to Taigi. Then I brought my face so close that our foreheads almost touched. I looked straight into his eyes as to not miss his reactions.
このスクールではオンスロート症をどう処理している？
どういう意味かな、しんちゃん。
言葉通りの意味だ。大義、 お前が言ったことだ。スクールはオンスロート症の危険を熟知している。だからこそ学生に対しては秘匿されている。これは確率論だ。35% のスライダーか、それと同じだ。スクールが HMI を集めれば一定数のオンスロートが出現するだろう。ならば対策していないはずがない。オンスロート症はスライダー化の何倍も危険だ。しかし伝染を避けるために存在を公にはできない。サクたちクラウンに対処させることもできない。真実を知れば彼女たち自身が感染し制御を失うかもしれないからだ。ではどうやって？
さあ、そんな話は一度も聞いていない。
人知れず間引いているのではないのか？
Like, for example, Mitri Kabutoyama. What if one of the reasons the Academy's high-tech invasive observations of its student body was to find all those showing signs of onslaught infection? If it was right, the devil descended, HMIs with onslaught syndrome were real monsters. If one appeared, merely stopping them required massive sacrifices. The tragedy of the Takazaki household was proof of that. How did they handle them then? Increasing prevention, quickly disposing of anyone who shows signs of transformation made the most sense. There was no room for emotion or consideration there.
わからない。
However, he denied that reasonable notion. His eyes didn't wander until the end. The man who was once my childhood friend shuts his art to me. But then I lost my words, for I noticed the pure grief deep in his heart. It was a question he could have evaded by simply looking away, but he still faced me, showing an iron will.
納得してくれたかい？
よくわかった。
Accepted his answer, even though my unfulfilled expectations bothered me. So many things had changed over the past 70 years, but I couldn't even be glad that this man who used to be my childhood friend hadn't changed at all. Shinji Narita knew that his theory regarding how the Academy dealt with the observed danger presented by HMIs was correct. Kurofune Mikado and Tokino Yomise had built a cruel, inhumane system, yet I couldn't find fault in any single aspect of it. I'd once compared HMIs to bombs. If only I knew. There was no comparison. We were bombs. It was the most apt description. The power of death lay dormant within all of us, like a ticking time bomb, waiting sadly until it came time to explode and wreak havoc. Onslaught syndrome had the power to remove our very humanity from us. If even a single person blew up, it would spread like wildfire and infect countless others. What was the perfect chance for our detonation? What was the percent chance of our detonation? 5? Was it less than 1? No, that didn't matter. There was something more important to consider.
しんちゃん、君はサクがオンスロート症を発症したと考えているのかい？
At the very least, she's probably starting to develop or something.
疑っている。
The abnormality in her actions over the past few years, the power unmatched by any HMI she'd killed, it all felt far too warped.
それは考えにくい。ここの資料によれば、検査の数値上、彼女はずっと非常に安定していた。オンスロート症の兆候はなかった。
Tag was right. If the cause was onslaught syndrome, then she'd had it for years. It was hard to imagine that Tokino Yomi had overlooked Saku's abnormality for that long. However, I saw Saku act unlike herself with my own eyes. It wasn't mere malice or bloodlust. It was something that seemed to wrap around my bones, something completely different. Perhaps Shinji Narita simply hoped that Saku Otanashi had onslaught syndrome. If that was the case, our only option was to lament her fate. Merely had to hate what she'd become, the root cause of the change in her, and believe that the Saku Otanashi I knew was real, not a front for a mad woman. However...
仮に言った。サクがオンスロート症を発症していた場合、治療する手段はあるのかね？
ないね。少なくとも、僕はそう聞いている。
I glimpsed at the back of the person staring in the corner of the room and saw no change. If she knew a way to save Saku, she would have chimed in immediately. Sakazaki clearly did not have a way to undo devil descent.
それで、どうする？
I had to decide. The longer I hesitated, the more blood would flow. If I waited, her soul would carry yet more
止
sin.
める。
音無し策はクラウンの筆頭、スクール最強の HMI だ。万に一つ彼女に勝てる目があるとすれば、同じクラウンの赤人玉緒だけだろう。
Tamao Akahito. 12 great HMIs weren't the only ones with powerful halos. Was Sakura Tanashi so powerful that only Tamao stood a chance in a fight with
い
her?
や、それがどうしたというのか。
No matter how hard the task, Shinin Narita would step up to the plate. I had to end it with my own two hands.
学園に報告すれば、理事長は最善の対策を取る。
だから黙って任せろというのかね。
そうだ。
甚だ身勝手ながらそれはできかねる。お前にも決着がつくまでは他言無用で願おう。
策がオンスロートなら人では及ばない。一人で挑んだところで勝ち目はないぞ。死にに行くのか。
エルと約束した。音無し策を救うと。
If Kurofune found out about it, he would do everything in his power to purge her. He would claim victory even if it cost him thousands of lives. That was the correct decision. Facing something inhuman and devilish, he had to possess an iron will that didn't fear having to make sacrifices. However, sacrifices would only further harm Sakura Tanashi. Each and every drop of blood spilled would sully her soul with sin. I promised to save her, which is why I couldn't allow that, no matter the cost.
約束は守らなければな。命を懸ける理由としてはお釣りが来る。
無茶だ。
無茶との付き合い方なら知っているとも。
Shinin Narita planned to do battle, but not on behalf of the dead individuals he didn't know or any future victims. He simply wished to save Sakura Tanashi's soul. Indeed, such selfish motivation truly fit an Avenger.
まったく。言い出したら聞かないね。
そういう性分なのでね。
それで、いつ？
すぐにでも。時間が経てば無用の犠牲も増える。
I turned around and headed to the exit.
わかった。僕も行こう。
Those unexpected words made me freeze. Surprise made me turn around. When I did, I saw him casually shrug as though he had no other choice.
これは珍しい。しんちゃんの驚いた顔を見るのも久しぶりだ。
Oh! Homie time!
無駄死には一人で十分ではないのかね。
Sakura Tanashi reigned at the top of the academy, acting as a symbol of fear to all the HMIs. The power that had reaped dozens of HMI lives was, as Taigi himself said, something truly extraordinary.
死にに行くつもりだったのかな。
Logically, I had no chance of victory.
私はいついかなる時も勝つつもりだ。
これだから自信過剰は困りものだね。
Taigi shrugged once again. Usually he looked like a shadow being dragged along, or someone tired of life. But there was none of that at the moment.
一人よりは二人の方がいくらかはマシだろ。まあ万に一つが二つになる程度かもしれないが。
万に二つか。
Two individuals planned to challenge the strongest HMI at the academy. Taigi Mikado and Shinin Narita's paths had diverged a long time ago, and any chance of them rejoining had disappeared along with it. Thus, that was a momentary dream. We merely planned to walk a few steps next to each
な
other.
るほど。それならば負ける気はしないな。
Like in the days of old, I stood in front and marched off towards our shared goal. We no longer had a need for words. Taigi walked with me as though it was natural. I planned to leave Eru behind, since I didn't want to involve with something that was sure to bring her great pain.
では、
Oops. What the fuck? Oh yeah, right, there's a gun in there. I failed to comprehend what had happened. I saw a red flower bloom. Fatal gunshot zoomed into the ceiling and vanished. Taigi covered his abdomen with his right hand. His palm slowly turned red, as though doused in paint. There was a black hole in his clothing that unnerved me.
大義
Taigi collapsed to the ground like a broken scarecrow after he uttered that last word. The Fresh blood flowing out of his stomach spread on the floor.
結局こうなっちゃいましたね。策を敵として扱うのはなしなんです。
My voice sounded hoarse. Eru held a handgun, aiming it directly at me. But where had she hidden it?
この銃のことなら成田が見逃したんじゃないですので、自信なくさなくていいです。そこのロッカーにあった時の先生の超遺品です。趣味人ですよね、時の先生。
A single bullet from the handgun in Eru's hand had tore open a hole in Taigi. She'd aimed it directly at me from a distance of only 3 meters. However, I was more surprised that I hadn't noticed any signs of her actions until moments ago. It wasn't simply that I couldn't sense her presence either, since she'd been at the edge of my vision the whole time.
はい、なんでしょう。
She spoke to me with the same tone she used when she laughed in our classroom. Oddly enough, the gun seemed like a perfect fit in her hands.
最初に私に近づいたのは策の命令か。
そうです。
策を救ってくれと言っ
そうです。こういう展開になったのは予想外でしたけど。
策は私の正体を探ろうとしたのか。
だと思います。
思う。
近づくこと、分かったことは知らせること。策の命令はそれだけでしたので、前にも言った通り、自分はただのものです。所有者の意図は問題ではありません。
心はないと。
そうです。高崎エルは役を演じて動作しているに過ぎません。笑顔の形をしてるから楽しいんだろうと解釈するのは見ている方の自由です。錯覚なんですけどね。
If it all seemed no different from a human, did it truly have a soul, or was it merely an imitation? Machines had intelligence, but no emotion. Human heart wasn't essential, since that introduced the possibility of more mistakes, when all they do was execute their functions. That was why they weren't equipped with anything like it. Machines had no fear, and worked without worrying about their inevitable destruction. No, that was certainly quite the mystery.
策を脅かすものは排除します。それが高崎最後の道具、エルの意味です。
Self-proclaimed tool, Eru spoke without emotion, as if that was just another one of her functions. I recalled the sight of Eru when she realized Sakura was safe. However, she quickly discarded those illusory shards and sealed them away.
分かった。
I decided to save the questions of whether Eru was real or not for later. Regardless of what the girl pointing the gun at me was, I first had to reject the conclusion where I got shot. Shindiri Narita had to save Sakura, both for Sakura's sake and Eru's. I always kept the promises I made, no matter what. There was an aspect of Shindiri Narita I could never part with. The gun was a mere 3 meters away. It was close, but Eru was no master gunslinger. Avoiding the bullet and closing the distance was child's play to me. I only needed a second to close the gap, take her gun and bind her. And so I would.
策を救う前にエル、君を救おう。
The moment I dashed to her, fully intent on knocking her out, did everything in my power to bring Shindiri Narita to a stop. Running up and disarming her were simply out of the question. After all, a precious family member I'd wanted to save more than anyone else had appeared before my very eyes. She was the one Shunsui Mikoto had completely failed to save.
まさかありえるはずが。バカな。
What had I almost done? Did it truly intend to stun my little sister was more precious to me than my very life? What a foolish and terrifying decision. A sense of relief washed over me because I hadn't harmed her. However, the next moment, Eru silently pulled the trigger. My abdomen burned as pain spread from it. Fell to my knees. Blood rushed through my fingers as they covered the gunshot wound. Pain granted me a moment of clarity. I understood that the person before me wasn't the innocent little sister who'd been mercilessly killed. That girl was long dead. I knew that much, and yet my will seemed to melt. The urge to give in to my feelings of love overpowered and overrode my reason.
まだ聞こえているかどうかわからないですが、ミステリーらしく種明かしをしましょう。 これが L のハローです。概念型 B 種。タイプはミッドサマーナイツドリーム8。他者の愛と同化するハロー。
I didn't hear her voice, and it produced a stunning revelation. She assimilated with the love of others. Everyone had a different shape of their love. There was no one who didn't have it. Love for their significant other, family, beliefs, perhaps even themselves. Eru Takazaki melted herself into the very concept of love as perceived by others. Love controlled people and made them powerless. Not a single person could resist it. Anyone she combined with their love against their will. Love was a natural part of all humans, and it was impossible to perceive something within you as an enemy. No sane person would have even considered it. Even if you had the power to destroy the world, it wouldn't work if you didn't contemplate using it. 5 centuries of the Takazaki family's research had culminated in that invincible power. She finally understood everything. Ada's lack of personality didn't come about because it made her a more convenient tool. Takazaki's halo assimilated with the concepts others had. If their sense of self and personality was too strong, they could probably resist it. That's why they were even turned into tools.
策の敵は自分の敵です。排除しなければならないのです。
なるほど。愛に同化しているから、その姿は最愛の対象として認識されるか。クーリの姿が見えるわけだな。
まだ喋れますか？びっくりです、成田。
I was surprised myself. Ada's power easily consumed people, no matter how hot they clenched their teeth and resisted. I myself had to do everything in my power to keep it together, but that only lasted a few seconds. The source of Eru's halo was the strongest love the target had. In a way, she was tearing Shindiri Narita apart with my own power. I understood that, but I still had no way of fighting it.
策を放っておけば、いずれエルは殺されるぞ。
自分、道具だと言ってるんですよ。いらなくなったら捨てられるのは当然です。
Suddenly sonorous words resounded through the cold room. Nah. They don't need those. The extent of her power suddenly grew. Eru, inhumanly, slowly, and precisely aimed at my forehead. The moment I fixed my eyes on the muzzle, I saw Ruri holding the gun. The dream of love was far too sweet, quickly enveloped and sealed away my sharpened will. It felt as though I was falling in love for the very first time all over again. My thoughts and even my vision turned hazy.
さようなら、お兄様。
Eru's finger started to pull the trigger. I knew that she'd fire the gun soon, but Ruri told me to remain in place. She aimed directly at my forehead. A single shot was more than enough to end my life. However, my sister wanted me to sit there and take it. My mind screamed, trying to force me into action, but I lost all power when faced with my sister's voice. Despite the fact that I knew exactly what was going on, the weight of love overwhelmed me. Just do the Japanese tactic that Tanjiro used in the Demon Slayer movie. Like, bitch, she would never do that kind of bullshit and just get more pissed. My hands went limp. I gave up on running. Red fluid leaked out of my abdomen and dripped onto the floor. Sister planned to end my life. That meant Shinri Narita's quest for vengeance had finally come to an end.
さよなら、成田。
No, Rudy had died. She died that night 7 years ago, along with all the other Mikados. That was the whole reason Shinri Narita existed. It survived in order to fulfill a single promise, my solemn oath, an oath of vengeance. Rudy had long since perished, and so I refused to let it end here, there.
リは死んだ。
The impossible phenomenon shocked Eru for a moment, granting me a split second to act. As far as I could tell, no human had it in them to resist Eru Takasaki's halo. Strength and speed did not matter when faced with Eru's power, which nullified the very will to resist. That was why she couldn't have missed. The bullet should have pierced Shinri Narita's forehead. However, the supposedly fatal shot sailed by harmlessly. By the time Eru had opened her eyes, it was already over.
眠っていたまえ。
Covered a carotid artery with my finger, preventing the flow of blood to her brain. Eru lost consciousness and collapsed on the spot. I almost fainted as well, which was why I used the breathing of Geb to harmonize my body and mind in order to keep standing. That was how drained I was. Eru had been a far more terrifying enemy than any other I'd faced. I hadn't even felt that corner when 4 armies surrounded me in a South American jungle. Took a step towards the device on the wall in hopes of calling a doctor. Unfortunately, my consciousness faded at that very moment. Still opened my eyes, but my vision remained hazy for quite a while. All I remembered was that I tried to walk, but then passed out. Probably had blood loss to blame for that little issue. As my vision cleared, I realized that it was my own dorm, that I was in my dorm room.
目が覚めましたか?
Silhouette blocking the light from the ceiling was Eru. After a few moments, I managed to make out her expression. Wonder what face she was making, but it turned out that she looked as composed as ever.
成田が今すぐ死んじゃいたいというなら考えてみます。
Consider, huh? The Eru from before wouldn't have even thought about it. She didn't seem to feel guilty about shooting me, which was good. With Eru, that was optimal. Tried to speak, my throat worked properly, but my pain increased in proportion to my regained senses. What a mixed
お
blessing.
付きのメイドーズに渡しました。どこかもっとまともな場所でもっとまともな治療を受けてるでしょう。
It hurt, but my body had been given first aid. Disinfection and stopping the bleeding seemed like more than enough to patch me up.
ということは、このまともでない治療はエルがしてくれたのだな。
奇想天外な治療を施しました。
それでいい。
As the brunt of the pain hit me, all my senses revived. Tried moving my finger and managed to do so easily enough. Then I pushed my arm against the bed and raised my upper body to assess the damage. The wound wasn't shallow. I'd received a blood transfusion, yes, but I more than likely couldn't move. Needed at least 6 hours of rest.
エル、私の体の調子は上々だ。君の心の調子はどうかね。
Eru gazed at her chest and placed her hand over it before looking up again and tilting her head.
どうでしょう。にわかなので下手なことは言えませんね。
言ってみたまえ。
多分これは自分自身の意志としてお願いがあります。
Eru took my hand and drew closer
策を救っ
to
て
me.
ください。
今エルのしていることが感情。人間の心が持てる。
心の機能？
感情はいかなる時も肉体の性能を阻害するが、一つだけ合理的ではない判断を下せるという機能がある。
Machines couldn't select the logical options because that went against their very
わ
nature.
ざわざバカな選択肢を選ぶってことですか？
それだけがあらゆる必然と矛盾を振り切って本物の奇跡に手をかける。
いい声で何かっこつけてるんですか？それって宝くじは買わないと当たらないからどれだけ確率が低くても買うと言ってるようなものでしょ？
そうとも言うな。だがエルはそれと同じことをしようとしている。策に従うという自分の在り方を変えてまでゼロに近い可能性にかけようとしている。
そうしないと策を救えないですから。
Eru had finally decided to move forward on her own. She decided to pick up what she treasured on her own without any orders to guide her. Now was no doubt the hallmark of a heart. She acquired a will of her own and real emotions, which she displayed awkwardly, like a child riding a bike for the very first
今エ
time.
ルが感じているのはきっと悲しみだ。
よくわかりません自分。今まで悲しかったことなんてないので。
高崎エルにとって音無策は大切な友人だということだよ。
She'd been her owner rather recently, but but that no longer applied.
悲しくて泣くってよく言いますけど、どうしてそんな無駄なことをするんでしょう。
涙を流すのは無駄なのかね。
悲しいというのは望まない結果になったということでしょう。それなら結果を変える手段を講じればいいんです。泣いたところで何も変わらない。そうすることに何の意味もない。どうして泣くんです？
言われてみればそうだな。人間というのはそんな無駄の積み重ねに意味を見出せるものなのだよ。
自分はもともと道具です。ただの器。機能以外には何も搭載されていません。だから自分の全部はサクからもらいました。今ここにこうしていることも、成田と話をしてることも。
サクと出会ったのは君にとって幸せだったかね。
以前も同じ質問をしましたよね。
あの時の君は道具が幸せを思ったりするかと問い返した。今のエルはどう感じている？
やっぱりよくわかりません。
I don't have a fucking clue what happened, so for now, I choose to call it bullshit. Like, unless they're gonna explain like, oh, because he did like that move with the artery or some bullshit, and then used like the activation of his halo caused the fucking like tool mental work thing to be like unraveled or some bullshit like that. Until they like actively like fucking explain it to where it makes sense, I choose to view it as bullshit. I'll be right back. I'm back and I'm far more cozy.
でもエロはこの今の自分をなくしたくありません。スクールにいた自分、クラウンの一員だったエロは価値あるものだったと思います。別の持ち主のエルではなく、サクのエルだったことを誇りに思います。
人間はそれを幸福と呼んでいるよ。
It always seemed to be shrouded in mist, but she looked extremely clear in that.
サクを救ってくれと言ったな。
はい。
エルとの約束はすでになされている。私は必ずサクを救う。
ありがとう。
She nodded as she usually did, knowing that it was her first heartfelt request since getting a heart. A question flowed to the top of my
本
mind.
当にいいのか？オンスロート症への治療法はないのだよ。
サクが自分の意志で決めたのであれば、それがどんな行いでも、エルは黙って従いました。でも、これは違います。サクは、誰よりもスクールを愛していました。この場所を守ろうとしていました。だから、高崎エルは、最後までサクの意志を、誇りを守ります。
She looked right at me with a resolute gaze. She decided to fight the most important person in the world to her. That kind of foolishness felt truly human.
承知した。必ず最後まで約束を果たそう。
Decided not to hesitate or lament our fate anymore. I knew what I had to do. Is it gonna be a case of Saku isn't suffering onslaught syndrome? She's the child that got abducted. I don't remember how many years ago they said it was. But what if she was the child and got, like, mind-fucked by... hypnotized and brainwashed by the anti-Halo men and then put into the academy? Because the anti-Halo men group that attacked her at the start didn't seem too well organized, let's say. So I doubt they would have been aware of that plan. Anyways. Did I read that? I decided not to hesitate or lament our fate anymore. I knew what I had to do.
ところで、サクはここにはいないのかね？
はい。自分たちが戻った時には、もう姿を消していました。
そうか。
What state was Sakura in? Had her mind finally succumbed to the disease? Perhaps she'd always been wearing a mask. Had a monster always lurked behind that gentle smile? That was the case. Was the friend Eru saw in Sakura a mask as well? I didn't know the answer to any of those questions. Neither I nor Eru had the means to understand Saku. But I did know that I had accepted Eru's request. And also, I wanted to save Saku Otonashi. In fact, I wanted to rush to her rescue straight away. But we were dealing with Saku, which meant I need to recover and form a proper plan. Waiting was a difficult battle in its own right.
それでは少し休ませてもらおう。
はい。
I decided to silently gather my strength, to wait until dawn, in order to settle things once and for all. Quickly lowered myself onto my bed to get as much rest as possible, but Eru instantly huddled up to me. I could only assume that she either wanted to sleep side by side or nurse me.
休ませてくれないのかね。
自分、愛の化身なので、十分すげえですよ。
それはなんとも。
自分に今までまともな意志があったのか、よくわかりません。でも、成田といると暖かくなる。そういうの、なんて言うんでしょうか。
心、感情、気持ち、いろいろな言い方がある。
今、こうしているのも同じ気持ちです。
本物が正しくて、偽物が間違っているとは限らない。少なくともエルは、たとえ偽物だとしても、本物以上に綺麗だ。
ベッドでいいっぽいセリフ言う男は、これっぽっちも信用しちゃいけないと、ハウツー本にありました。
エルもそう思うかね。
Like always, she tilted her head and
わ
thought.
かりません。ハヤシライスとハッシュドビーフ、どっちがどっちかくらい、よくわからないものです。
Words made me picture two brown plates. Both had beef and vegetables boiled in tomato and brown sauce, and yes, it was hard to tell the difference.
一つ言えるのは、今は、成田と、こうしていたいと思っているのです。
Actually, you know what? Hold on. So I also just saw that I got a message. I just quickly responded to that. Hi, she rice. Hashed beef. Okay, that is literally the same image. And this website is telling me that hashed beef is literally just another name for hayashi rice. So instantly, that joke doesn't make sense. Like if this fucking definition was right, that was literally no fucking difference. That makes all less sense, doesn't it?
前と同じように。
同じなんですが、違います。多分。
That moment I realized something. The affection I began feeling for her was probably due to her halo. It was only natural to feel immense joy when being with the one you loved the most. Mere chance brought euphoria. Eru Takazaki had defined herself as a tool anew, not of heart, yet she had the power to move the heart like none other. It was different than last time, but I still felt immense pleasure. There was no longer any need for the halo. Right now, Eru herself was Shinri Narita's love.
成田、何考えてますか？他のこと考えるの、あんま推奨しませんけど。
ああ、関係なくもない。エルがなぜこれほど愛しく感じるのかという単純な問題についてだ。いや、答えなどない。ないのがいい。愛に理由を問うのはきっと無粋なことだよ。
簡単で難しいですね。心って。
I caressed her hair, doing so brought back the smell of shampoo, filling the air with a pleasant scent.
私が平坦な乙女にこれほど好意を持つことになろうとは、人生とはわからないものだ。
やはり変態ですね、成田は。感心します。変態の星です。成田ザ・ライジングスターです。ところで、体調はどうですか？割と良くなったと思いますが。
ああ、そうだな。どういうわけかさっきまでよりも随分いい。
エルのハローのおかげです。愛は無力にすることもありますが、力も与えてくれるのです。今は自分の体力を成田に分け与えたんですね。愛少女エルルン、超すごい。
それはなんというか、まさにロマンチックだね。
And she truly shared her stamina with me. I was tired, but I felt energy welling up from deep inside me. The girl who had been engaging in conversation mere seconds ago was now sleeping peacefully.
眠ったか。はあ、なんともマイペースだね。まったく君らしい。
Her sleeping face made her appear defenseless. Somehow Eru looked even younger than she usually appeared.
ありがとう、エル。
I embraced her and expressed my gratitude. Shindini nodded that I'd already regained some degree of strength. With only a few more hours of rest, I would be at full fighting capability. Thus I would sleep. Once I woke from my slumber, I would settle things once and for all. I involuntarily woke up far before dawn. Through the window I saw breathtaking stars shining amidst the deep black backdrop of the sky. The moon illuminated the entire world. Its cold silver light covered the ancient forest and buildings with a pale glow. The night was so silent and still that it made a chill run down my spine. As I looked at the academy's grounds through the glass pane, it appeared completely dead, with us as the sole survivors.
エル。
Ada was sleeping by my side and I shook her awake.
朝ですか？
起きたまえ。
Didn't hear any suspicious sounds or see any shadows in my peripheral vision. However, I almost believe I'd caught eye of an invincible spider web. My basic senses didn't notice anything of it, but I felt restless, which made my hair stand on end. Shindri Narita knew the feeling well. I recognized it because I escaped the hands of the Reaper 7 long years ago. That was the stench of death, the smell of impending doom that I knew all too well. I tugged on Eru's hand as I dashed through the empty night. My wound still hurt, but thanks to Eru I had the stamina I needed. I sharpened my senses. The eerie feeling that washed over me grew stronger. Where did it come from? I entered the hallway of the 3rd floor and stopped dead.
こっちなんですか？
You're not a kid on a fucking family trip.
あの廊下の向こうは確か。
理事長室ですね。
Smelled death beyond the door. A gruesome sight welcomed us once I opened the door.
エル。
平気です。
I assumed that was something I shouldn't show her, but she seemed utterly unfazed. An obtrusive furnishing, a picture of an unfulfilled dream, a luxurious carpet. The room appeared exact same as when I'd visited it the prior day, except blood, blood, blood. Felt like I was looking at a snippet of hell. Fresh blood spread around like paint, coloring the ceiling, floors, and walls. Right there, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, was Kurofune Mikado. Blood flowed out of his throat. His posture made him look like an abandoned toy. I didn't need to inspect his body to know he'd perished. Next to him, I saw the maid who previously acted as his messenger. Something felt off. Though he was prone but face up. His face was backwards. He'd obviously been killed. Human head wasn't meant to rotate 180 degrees. Next to him, there was another bloodied person. Taigi.
Taigi!
まだ生きてます。傷は浅いみたいです。
Ran up to his body. Had to be careful not to move him more than necessary. The wound Eru had made must have opened since there was blood on his uniform.
タイギ、一体何があった？
黒船、父をサクが殺した。
Taigi tried to speak as he held his wounds, his face warping in pain.
サクが
Worst case scenario had happened. Sakura was the one responsible for this. Yet she actually did have onslaught syndrome.
嫌な予感がして、僕が来たらすでに。
His voice was akin to a falling tear. Seemed to be in pain so great that I expected him to vomit out his lungs. So I knew it wasn't just because of his wounds. Sakura, the person he'd wanted to believe in until the bitter end, had killed his father.
サクはどこへ？
外へ。君たちと入れ替わりに。
まだどこか近くにいるということですね。
Eru glared at the door Sakura had just left through. Her solid profile reminded me of a detailed doll. Like usual, she appeared far from serious. That was probably a good thing.
急ぐぞ、エル。
はい。
すまないが、手当てはせずに行く。助けが来るまでじっとしていろ。
I had to chase Sakura. I called for help to the men from an info layer. Said they would arrive soon.
どうして彼女は。
Whoops. I had no proper answer to the pained mutter that left his mouth through ragged breaths. When I turned around, my eyes stopped at Kurofune.
まったく。
Is that truly the conclusion? Had Shinji Narita's 7 long years of life led to such a meager
無
end?
様というにも程がある。人の心さえ捨てて果たそうとした誓いの幕引きが、これとは。
Whoops.
成田。
すまない。急ぐ。
I ran, following Sakura's presence. Not yet. It was not yet time to fall to my knees. I had to keep moving forward. Shinji Narita had something he had to do. He promised Iru Takazaki that he would save Sakura Tonashi. The promise had to be kept no matter the cost. With only that in mind, I continued running. However, I stopped at the stairs leading to the second floor because I felt someone hiding nearby. It was Sento Shishikai. As he stood there at the edge of the dark school building, he appeared to be holding in laughter.
シシカイ教諭、策を見なかったかね。
黒船は死んだのか？
His face warped in joy as he found himself unable to hold back his laughter any longer.
策を見なかったかと尋ねているのだが。
そうかそうか、やっぱりな。身の程をわきまないバカは死にやがったか。
He held onto his side and laughed as if he'd just witnessed the pinnacle of comedy. The emergency seemed to have revealed his true colors. I never expected much of him, but he was even more useless than I imagined.
他を当たるとしよう。
はい。
待てよ、少しは落ち着け。黒船があの理事長が死んだのがショックだろう。私がどうしてここにいるのか想像もつかなくて驚きだろう。成田君、頭の悪い。
He's just immediately gonna tear open his fucking case.
それはな。
お前が内通者だからだろう。シシカイセント。とうに分かりきっていることを今さら言わなくてもいい。夜店時野がいなくなり、スクールが手薄になったので隙を伺っていたのだろうが、それこそ三流の証明だ。どうしてそれを？
Couldn't help but wonder why he seemed so surprised. Had the man truly believed that no one suspected him?
そうだったのですか。
そうだったのだよ。どこの手のものかは私の知ったことではないがね。これまでスクールの敵対勢力に情報を流してたのは彼だ。今夜の出来事と彼は無関係だよ。この男にとって黒船が死んだのはいわばキャビネットからムーチーといったところか。
ザクたちも揃って獅子会の野郎はスカンと言っていました。納得の雑魚っぷりですね。
待て貴様、私を雑魚だと。黒船や時の女子も当然気づいていたはずだ。泳がされていたのだよ。さすがにその程度の自覚はあると思っていたのだが、これはいよいよ。
I wanted to heave a sigh due to his ignorance, but even that seemed like an utter waste of
た
time.
だ生き延びただけだが、それでも勝ちは勝ちだ。三流にしては妨害の拾い物。邪魔にならないよう幸運と勝利をかみしめながら引っ込んでいたまえ。エル。
はい、行きましょう。
I like how they just immediately shut down Shishkai. Like he's like, I'm the traitor. Like, oh, fuck off. We need to move on.
雑魚だと化け物どもがこの私を雑魚呼ばわりだと舐めやがって。
There seemed to be no end to his cursing, which was so intense it nearly melted his tongue. Once Narita and Eru walked away, Sento Shishkai was left alone, and he ran through the hallway, spewing hatred all the while. With Kurofune dead, he had no reason to stay in that den of monsters. He ran down to the first floor using a different staircase than Narita and Eru. He tried to convince himself that it was an act of pride, but it was actually just him trying to avoid the person who had read him like a book.
今のうちにせいぜい勝ち誇っていろ。すぐに思い知らせてやる。お前たちみたいな化け物が人様みたいな顔して生きていく場所は。
And he's dead. Something felt wrong. Hishka didn't understand what had happened, but in simple terms, something that wasn't supposed to be there was, and something that was supposed to be there wasn't. The thing that wasn't supposed to be there was a statue. Schools generally had at least one of them in their gardens. However, the chairman of the academy didn't want one, so the avant-garde art that had looked like a joining of a sphere and a round gimlet was its replacement. Somehow, the over 2 meters tall garden ornament was right next to him. A thing that heavy could only have been moved by a crane, so why was it right here? And then it finally hit him. His thoughts caught up to reality. The presence of that thing wasn't supposed to be there. That wasn't supposed to be there was the reason why the thing that was supposed to be there wasn't there. It was all balanced. His entire left half had been crushed into nothing. Searing pain, felt too great to put into words, burned his brain. He opened his mouth to scream, but his destroyed lungs were too empty for that. Instead, only blood escaped his mouth. In an attempt to escape his demise, he flayed his sole arm and moved his one leg like a jester. A true monster stood before him. It wasn't even looking at him. Instead, it merely walked away like any person would after stepping over on an ant. Sento Shishkai died without anyone sparing him a single thought. Pathetic. Sucks to be you, I guess. Night, the academy, an empty hallway. Inside of the place that had claimed to be the forefront of humanity, mere hours ago, no longer looked inhabitable. Instead, it was akin to the gate of hell, surrounded by the stench of blood so thick you could touch it, and the awfully dense presence of death. A single breath of the air seemed enough to rot lungs. A single woman strode through the empty halls. It was Sakura Tonashi. It was all, like always, her long hair danced in the wind behind her. I guess she does have onslaught syndrome then, probably. Like always, her long hair danced in the wind behind her. She was clad in her usual uniform as well. However, for the very first time within the Academy's hall, the suffocating malice emanated off her. Wouldn't be strange for anyone normally exposed to the invisible, powerful feet of a presence to instantly lose their sanity. It was malice so pure that it couldn't possibly have existed naturally, the kind of weakness that only demons were capable of. Sakura elegantly walked through a land of death, not making a single sound. The pride on display made her seem like the queen of the world. The woman was the strongest being, the pinnacle of humanity. None could match her. She herself knew that well, and thus she didn't panic or rush. She simply fulfilled her goal, so anything else was just extra, like sweets after a meal. She went to the west. What reason? None. If she had to name something, she would have mentioned her boredom. Didn't want to end the fun night. Climax had to be far more exciting. The dorms were located in the east end of the academy. That hour, the clueless students were most likely waiting for morning while enjoying their sweet dreams. She laughed. It sounded haughty, adorable, and jovial all at the same time. She'd forgotten that sweet feeling. Her heart danced like that of a child before a nice meal. Step by step, she walked while savoring the joy like a piece of candy in her mouth. Security cameras placed all over the campus didn't concern her at all, for she knew that no one was there to react to the footage. They were all gone. She had eliminated every last one of them and hadn't even left a trace of her work. There were no humans there. And so she herself had lost her humanity long ago. Eliminating them was as simple as taking candy from a baby. It probably wasn't even a necessary act, but she'd done it for fun. She twisted them, crushed them, minced them, cut them apart, made them cry, scream, and beg for mercy. Because it filled her with immense joy. Next, she wished to do the same at the dorms. She planned to start by paying them a casual visit. She would knock on the door 3 times and welcome herself inside. Based on how late it was, everyone had to be resting in their beds already. Thus, she would head to the closest room and tear off the head of the first person she saw. She would refrain from doing that in other rooms, however. An instant death was no fun, so tearing off an arm seemed best. How many would she have to kill before the others in the dorm noticed?
200人。ああ、なんておぞましくて楽しみなこと。ガラクタ製の人形遊び。
It was time for a bloody
さ
waltz.
あさあみんな、今夜は私と踊りましょう。夜が明けるまで、怯えて、嘆いて、逃れて、はばれて、抗って。
The haughty evil queen suddenly stopped in place. A shadow had peeked out of the door to the grand staircase. Single silhouette stood before her. Oh, is Tomo gonna die? Can't help but feel like Tomo's gonna die. It seemed to bar her path, and it didn't hesitate or waver. In her mind, it didn't matter who that was. After all, they were mere playthings, and she planned to use her power to rid the silhouette of life as easily as she would a swat a fly. She formed a fist and struck the glass window attached to the hallway. Didn't seem like she'd used a lot of power, but the punch created a 5-meter crack, which quickly made the glass shatter. She employed some sort of magic. The odd occurrences didn't end there, however, for the glass shards all ignored. Obeyed gravity and fell towards the silhouette. That was her power. This halo deceived the world and made it fall. It was akin to a sideways storm of bullets. No other description seemed appropriate. The speeding swarm of shards looked much like a kaleidoscope as it reflected the moonlight. They were blades that blinded people with their beauty and tore them to bits as they passed by. It was exactly what would happen to the silhouette. Or so one would think. Instead of blooms of blood, the shards merely ripped off bits of black cloth, or pieces of clothes worn by the silhouette. The silhouette had looked like a shadow at first because she was clad in all black. It evaded the thousands of shards and soon stood before the woman.
楽しそうじゃねえか。
Silhouette was Tama Wakahito.
あらあら玉緒、あなたなの？
The woman chuckled in joy as Tamo sniffed the air.
はあ、俺だよ。鼻が利くんだよ。育ちが悪いせいでな。ま、俺のことなんざどっちでもいい。やけに楽しそうじゃねえか、サク。祭りに向かうガキみてえだ。
I don't know why my head's so annoying today.
そうよ。今夜は何年ぶりかのパーティーだもの。ハイカブリ姫だわ。念願のお城にようやく呼ばれた末の妹の気分なの。
エスコートはどうした？ぼっちでパーティーへ行くのかよ。
そんなものはいらないわ。私以外はいらないの。そうでしょ？何もかも邪魔なのよ。ところで玉緒、こんな深夜に出歩くなんて、あなた規則違反じゃないかしら？
そういや、ここの規則には載ってなかったよな。
The woman grinned. Full lips resembled a crescent moon. Never seen that expression on a friend's face before. It was so vile that it chilled her to the core. It was so vibrant and beautiful, like fresh blood.
行く先はどこだ？
寮へよ。決まってるでしょ？
自分のベッドで朝までおとなしくしてる。
そうね。一番最後にはそうするわ。
そうか。最後か。じゃあピクニックはここで終わりだ。
Tomo took a step forward. She entered the maddening, ghastly atmosphere surrounding the girl with the spirit of an early bird waking up.
こいつは俺の仕事だろう。お前を止めてやるよ、サク。
The woman sounded impressed by her friend's words, but she actually just found them strange.
ごめんなさい。笑ってしまった。あまりにおかしくて。止めると？玉緒が？私を？どうやって？
どうやってもどう転んでもあるかよ。どう考えたってお前のリア王をどうにかできんのは俺っきゃいねえだろ。じゃあなんとかするしかねえよ。お前を放っといたら土地狂ったパーティー気分で一体何をやらかすかこっちとらお見通しだ。
お見通し？へえ、そうなの？
お前みたいな世間知らずは知らねえだろうがな。世の中にネジの外れた連中なんてそれこそ吐いて捨てるぐらいにはいるんだぜ。同じさ。今のお前はそういうバカどもとそっくりの顔してやがる。人間なんてそこらの草と同じ。おとなし
Whoops.
さくな。その顔。人間なんてそこらの草と同じにしか見えてねえ。ガーデニング気分であっちを刈り取りこっちを刈り取り、引かれた土地狂いだ。ま、俺が言えた義理じゃねえけどな。おとなしさくな。その顔は似合わねえよ。だから俺が止めてやる。
できるの？
できてもできなくてもだよ。
The two girls faced each other. Tamo's gaze was akin to a fiery blaze, while Sakura looked back at her with cold eyes as she chuckled in joy. The battle began the moment the two sides recognized one another as worthy opponents. Then to Sakura, this encounter couldn't even be called a battle. She was the one who reigned at the peak. She was the absolute strongest. All other beings were merely toys crafted for her amusement. They were akin to the insects that children mercilessly killed.
俺がスクールに来たのは別に大した理由じゃなかったんだ。こんなところ好きになる理由はなかった。でも気に入っちまってたよ。ざまあねえよな。俺はろくでなしなんだ。だからろくでなしじゃないお前や空子やエルにはもっとかっこいい生き方をしてほしかった。
素敵でしょ？ 今の私、自由でたった一人、誰にも縛られず誰も必要としない、完全というのよ。
化け物って呼ばれるんだよ、それは。俺の知ってる音無し咲なら多分そう言ったよ。どうしてこうなっちまったんだろうな。
偽物だからよ。あなたたち全部偽物。本物は私一人。この世界では本物にしか価値はないのよ。
Woman spoke as if she was stating the obvious.
なるほど。
It all seemed to add up. Shocked by the fact that she still hadn't shed a single tear, Tomo nodded,
俺は
shocked by the
確か
fact.
に偽物だ。偽の学生で、偽の友達で。なるほど。そいつは見事に価値がない。
泣き言は終わり？弱者ほどいろいろなものを欲しがる。正しいとか愛してるとか友達とか。
悲しいな。
嬉しいのよ、玉尾。
Thus, the words spoken as if sung seemed to form a double helix as they echoed and tangled. No. No, 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 no,
Run!
no. You don't need the cringe broken English. School building suddenly shook. That was an earthquake, however. It was far too localized for that. Naturally, I felt the wave of bloodlust from the first floor from such a distance. Taking Eru into my arms, I dashed towards its origin. Found at the east end of the first floor's hallway, ran in front of the door to the grand staircase. There was a black dust all around, signs of a battle, surely. This likely happened by vision, but beyond it I saw one, now two silhouettes. One of them was Sakura, bathed in cold moonlight. Gruesome beauty stood victorious. Next to her feet was Tomo, all bloody on the ground. It was rather evident who'd won that battle. The sight made me doubt my eyes. Tomo's halo was a physical area type that enhanced her abilities to human levels. Someone who'd actually fought her and stood her beastly strength as well. That time she held back because it was merely a duel, while this was a true fight to the death. Tomo had probably faced her for that very reason. She wished to put an end to things herself. Even if Sakura Tanashi was as strong as HMI at the academy, she shouldn't have been a match for Tomo in a battle to the death. Yet the result was clear. While Tomo was on death's door, Sakura appeared literally unharmed. Would have understood if they'd fought hard and it appeared close, but that hadn't happened. Powerful was she to have reached such a one-sided conclusion. Sakura raised her left hand, like the Reaper's scythe, would fall and rid Tomo of her life, but she was too injured to prevent it.
あなたはよくやったわ、玉尾。偽物にしては。
はい、やつだな。まだ終わってねえよ。
その傷ではあなたのハローでも追いつかない。自分で分かってるくせにもう立てないでしょ。拳も握れないでしょ。足もまともに動かない。あがいても体を起こして口を聞くだけで精一杯。それでどうするの？
The difference between them was apparent, like that of a tiger and a mouse. Despite essentially licking the floor, Tomo challenged the woman who had her life in the palm of her hand.
教えてやるよ。だから。
She used her torn arm as support and stood up using her legs, which bent in a strange way. Tomo rose her body, which felt as heavy as lead, even slower than a normal person would crawl.
かかってこいよ、本物。偽物ってのはな、往生際が悪いんだぜ。
まったく可愛らしい。そうよ。そうでなくてはね。赤人玉緒なんだもの。エトワールの一人、クラウンの一角ですものね。この程度でくじけていられないわよね。あなたの両肩にはスクールのお友達全員の命がかかってるんですものね。 もっと声を聞かせてほしいわ。そうね。まずは耳から行こう。その次は目で、それから鼻、唇、指、腕、足。順番に順番にもいでいこう。あなたはどこまでいけるかしら。泣き叫ばずに我慢できるかな。やっぱり試してみなくてはわからないわよね。
見ろよ。
ええ。
Reaper's scythe swiftly fell. The blade was unmoving and the attack was sharp as any blade of legend. However, the slash that sailed towards Tamo's left ear merely cut through empty air. I slipped by and grabbed Tamo with my right arm. Edo remained in my left one the entire time. I became one with the wind, but Sakura had still noticed me and changed her target, grazing my temple. Sheer power for a knife hand strike was ridiculous. A simple touch from her fingertips would have crushed my skull like a ripe persimmon.
君を抱いて走るのも2度目だな。
有田と自分です。無視すんな、かませ犬ヤンキー。
So I made some distance between us and Sakura with Tamo in my arms. Even though it had turned into a 3 against 1 battle, Sakura didn't attempt an escape. In fact, it didn't even seem like she saw it need to chase me. Instead, Sakura merely looked at me with the noble grace and haughtiness of a hegemon. With the noble grace.
どうしたの成田。こんな時間にエルまで連れて。不純異性交友だなんて本当に困ったものね。
She shrugged, looking the same as she had during our prior meeting. But something about her had warped. Adding death and an air of blood, Sakura Tanashi looked even more enthralling than before, making me believe that even so much as talking to her would rid me of my soul.
恐ろしいな。これが音無し策か。
I let go of the girls and stood in front of them like a shield.
バカ、引っ込んでろ。成田の出る幕。
Tamo seemed to be supported by the last vestiges of her willpower. Merely talking almost made her lose
玉緒の
consciousness.
ことは任せよう。
四天王一番の小物は任されました。
Focused my attention on the maiden before me. I was facing a being beyond human comprehension. So no chance unless I unleashed all of my abilities.
それでここまでわざわざ何をしに？
約束を果たしに来たのだよ。
それはつまり私の邪魔をするために？
音無し策を救うために。
The laughter reminded me of a bell as it echoed all around us.
救う？救う？誰を救うつもりなの？成田。出来損ないの偽物がまさか私を救うというの？
I didn't feel like talking much at that point, so I merely asked a simple question.
すべて君のやったことか。
どこからどこまで全てに入るのかよくわからないけど大体はそうね。
どうしてだね。
そんなことを言われても人が何かする理由なんてそんなのは決まってるわ。楽しかったからよ。
She said all that as if it was obvious. If it was only obvious. She said all that as if it was only obvious. She was actually surprised that I'd asked the question. That fact made the hopeless outcome rather clear.
まああえて言うなら目障りだったから。例えば花を育てている時にたくさん虫がついていたとしたらあなただって取ってしまうでしょ。
Why is my headset so annoying today?
そうか。
さ
I lowered my stance and dashed forward without even waiting until Sakura stopped nodding, cutting through the curtain of dust. It closed the whole 5 meters of the distance between us in a single step. Well, I'm starting to lose my fucking power to speak, ability to speak. I could have reached her if I wanted to, but instead I used my second step to pass by her. Took my third step when I got behind her, kicking up the wall that intersected with the one to Sakura's back left. Fourth step went to the ceiling right above her. It was an instantaneous corkscrew attack that seemed to defy gravity. Once upside down, I kicked off the platform above to launch a lightning-fast ambush on Sakura, who had completely lost sight of me. None of what I'd done used a halo. It was all the work of human ingenuity. With enough skill and spirit, even walls and ceilings were valid footholds. I didn't know what Sakura was capable of, but she'd cornered Tomo Akahito while remaining unharmed, so I had no choice but to act as quickly as possible. The unreasonable spiral movement I performed was more about shaking off her spirit than vision. I didn't know whether Sakura was the greatest offense or defense. But whichever it was, my life would end the moment she used it. So I relied on the element of surprise, hoping that it would allow me to overwhelm the strongest HMI. Several feints, no sound at all, my attack couldn't even be perceived yet. In the end, I pathetically rolled on the ground to create some distance between us, while Sakura merely remained in place.
惜しい惜しい。
まったくだ。危うく3度は殺されかけた。
I wrung out those words as the queen smiled broadly in
これ
joy.
が君のハローか。なるほど。玉尾でも届かないわけだ。
She ate my speed. That was the best way to describe it. I'd attacked 7 times in 3 vastly different ways. However, all my knife hand strikes and kicks lost speed as they drew closer to her. And lost speed was differently from merely slowing down. She'd stopped me midair and reached for me like a lady reaching for an oasis in the desert. Didn't know how she would have done it, but I understood that my life would have ended if she grasped me.
今の奇襲は我ながらこれまでで3子の敵だったのだがね。あれで防がれるのなら意識するしないを問わない王都だろう。まさに無敵の盾だな。しかしどこまで防げるものだろうね。例えば銃弾やミサイルの類だとしたら。
試してみれば？私は構わないわよ。
After looking at her confident face, I guessed the results without even attempting it. Energy was the product of speed and mass, and she could reduce all speed to 0, so no attack could harm her. Sakura could see me, hear me, and she didn't freeze, so it wasn't like she blocked off all light or heat. Did you choose what to let through? Where? Were there set conditions for
い
it?
ずれにしてもそのあたりが突破口か。
5つです。
For a moment I thought I imagined the voice behind me. Forgetting my situation, I
なん
questioned
と
it.
言ったのかね。
自分はサクのキャバリエでしたから知っています。もしサクが以前と同じなら同時にエミュレートできるハローは最大で5つです。
It meant Sakura Tanashi had 4 other halos at her disposal. You know what? There were people with multiple halos.
なるほど。スクールの頂点というだけはある。
That alone was shocking enough, but Eru didn't stop
そ
there.
れとサクにハローは通用しません。
通用しないと。
そのままの意味です。サクのリア王にはハローによる干渉ができないのです。系統も威力もグレードも問わず外部からのいかなるどんな干渉もです。
This is some serious King Crimson bullshit! Or I guess it makes more sense to call it, what was it, I forget what it was. Hold on. Love Train? I think it was Love Train. It was Love Train. That's the highest best. It's considered one of the most powerful sounds in the entire game. Right? Ah, I see the issues. It showed me the fucking I just clicked the first wiki that I saw, but turns out this was like just a JoJo wiki. No. It was a fucking wiki for like some weird ass fucking Roblox game mode. Why? Why? Fuck off. Go fuck yourself right now. There we go. Becomes effectively invincible, hiding within a pocket dimension. The gap of space, the light that follows him, all the light of which is body also ability to redirect all misfortunes that come and leaving only good fortune. I mean, I guess it's basically the same, but not quite. Anyways. You reminded me of what you said at dawn when we last met. Would you have been asking if I really wanted to try using my halo on her? Sakura, the halo that nullified halos. She truly sat at the peak of power within the academy. Defeating her involved breaking through her halo while not using your own. It also explained why Tamo alone stood a chance against her. Her Tempest 4 improved all physical abilities. By transforming her halo into physical speed and power, she could reach Sakura.
さて、相談はもういいかしら。次の手品があるなら見せてちょうだい。芸が尽きるまでは付き合ってあげよう。
Sakura waited, fully confident. Of course she did. To her, our desperate struggles were a little more than window dressing. The proud girl who once loved the academy and wished to protect it with her life laughed as she played around with people's lives like toys. The fact that the Sakura I knew no longer existed was the saddest part of it all.
光栄の至りだよ、女王陛下。せっかくの慈悲にお応えして、もうしばらくダンスのパートナーを務めよう。
Stuck my right hand forward and assumed the fighting stance. My opponent was an omnipotent hegemon who boasted both the strongest offense and defense. But the difference in power between us was rather evident. Stood no chance and had no means to harm her. However, I still refused to fall to my knees. I was to save Sakura no matter what, so I had to keep at it until the end. Suddenly, right before we clashed, a tiny silhouette entered the space between us.
自分がやります。
The moment Sakura nodded to prepare to clash, Eru sat there and rose to her feet. Eru had carefully placed Tamo on the floor, and with just a glance says goodbye, she faced the strongest HMI at the academy head on. Tamo wanted to stop her. Fortunately, her body refused to listen. She'd obviously overdone it during her fight with Sakura, but staying silent was out of the question. Sakura and Eru. Eru's shot at victory in a confrontation between the two was literally non-existent. Sakura's King Lair 3 negated all direct halo effects, rendering Eru's only method of attack ineffective. It was akin to an ant standing against a tidal wave. There was no question of what was going to happen in a few dozen seconds. Tamo's voice was barely audible, as if she'd used her last bit of strength to speak. As soon as I heard it, I closed in on Eru. If Eru's actions were entirely reckless, I planned to listen to Tamo and stop her no matter what.
やると言っても、何をするつもりだ。
サクとは自分が戦うということです。
I was behind Eru, so I couldn't read her expression. However, I didn't need to see to know that Eru had her sights set on Sakura and nothing else.
サクにはハローが通じないと言ったのは君だ。
はい。でも自分ならできるかも。
I might. That illogical decision seemed entirely unlike Eru
そう
Takazaki.
あれかしと信じるのか、高崎。
自分はエルはサクを救いたい。
It is said that, despite believing it to be impossible, she spoke as Sakura's friend, not a Takazaki tool.
あなたは私のものじゃないの？
そうです。そうでした。でも今はよくわかりません。成田のおかげでわからなくなってしまいました。エルにわかっているのはサクを救いたい。それだけです。
わからないわ。何から救うの？こんなに私は上機嫌で自由で気ままなお祭り気分。今夜は朝まで踊り続けるつもりなのよ。
わからなくなっていることから救います。
私の言うことが聞けないのね。せっかく直してあげたのに。
Sakura released an invisible force. It wasn't bloodlust or hostility. It was merely proclaiming her presence. It was so overwhelming that I found it hard to keep my eyes open. However, Eru didn't back away. Instead, she took the surge of malice, which even I subconsciously avoided head-on. Resisting the wind, Eru took a step towards her friend, placed my hands on her shoulder to support her.
君の覚悟は承知した。迷うことなく生きたまえ。何が起ころうと、私はここで支えていよう。
Besides the support her reckless act, Tamo gasped behind me, shocked by my decision.
ありがとうございます、成田。
Eru wished to challenge Sakura, fully aware of her powers. She must have had a solid plan. No matter how difficult it would be, or at what cost it would come. If Eru believed in it, so did I. She the night that wished to support Eru Takazaki's will until the very end. Listen, I've told you before. No. Whoops. No. Just say set again, please. What followed was a set of words akin to a sorrowful song. Fuck, sorry. Let's try that again. Eru looked at Sakura while Sakura sneered at Eru. A field of blood bloomed in the air. Eru released the red liquid out of her mouth, eyes, ears, nose, and drew red lines as it trickled down. What the fuck?
おとなし作のキャバリエだったあなたはよく知っているはずよね。ハローで干渉しようとすれば私は自動でそれを破壊する。いつまで持つのかしら。
までです。
今ので死ななかったのは大したものだけど時間の問題というやつよ。
忘れたんですか？エルのハローはサクが半分持っていった。半分しかないんだから受けるダメージだって半分ですよ。
That's why she hunted down HMI. She can take halos.
ハローの制御が全くできない不良品として自分が誰なのかもわからなかったエルをそうしてサクは救ってくれました。だから今度はエルがサクを救います。
Eru found the fact that she'd said that rather strange. To face Sakura as she had was both reckless and futile. She knew better than anyone that. For she was closer to Sakura than anyone else. By doing so, she'd also rejected Eru Takazaki's very existence. Not Teru. Eru Takazaki. Why is it continuously her name that I fuck up? Tools that attempted to harm their owners were worthless trash.
へえ。
Sakura sneered. What a nightmare. The expression on Sakura's face didn't suit her at all. She had to be woken up by a good slap in the face. When she'd first enrolled, Eru was a defective product that couldn't even create the halo, so even her sense of self was vague. The one who fixed her was Sakura. She built her up brick by brick, like a building. Perhaps Sakura had only done it to kill time, or perhaps she took pity on the tool that didn't even know what it was. That meant the world to Eru. She was but a tool, and Sakura expanded her horizons for the very first time. That moment, Eru finally understood. She'd felt what people called gratitude all along. Her heart would always be an imitation. Nothing could escape the form they were born with. Eru, as one born as a machine, would always be a fake. But still, there was a warmth in her heart, which was given to her by both Sakura and Narita. That alone was enough. Perhaps that smile was more than an illusion designed to make it seem like the person was having fun. But this momentary joy was precious enough to me that nothing else mattered. With that in mind,
ありがとう、サク。それに、成田。
she internally muttered the words she probably wouldn't have time to say. She planned to spread all the love she had acquired, fulfill her function with the life she was granted.
良いの成田。今のは耐えられたけど次はダメ。エルは死んでしまうわよ。
それがどうかしたのかね。
First time so far, Sakura showed actual
そ
surprise.
れでいいの？
いいも悪いもない。高崎エルが自分で決めたのだ。そして私はここで支えていると約束した。そしておとなしさく君を救おう。
Narita forced more strength into the hands holding Eru's shoulder. Eru appreciated the steadfast support. If she had the ability to shed tears, she would have surely done it.
それは無駄よ。
無駄ではありません。エルにはおとなしサクの愛がわかります。
分かったから。
サクの中に以前の愛が残っていると言っているのです。さっきだって成田を逃した。玉緒だってあっさり殺せたはずなのに、
それは
楽しんでいるからですか。そうかもしれません。でもそうでないかもしれません。エルはそうでないことを信じます。
Eru essentially wished to hack Saku. She planned to access the love she once had, which had been trapped inside her, and pull it out. The likelihood of success was next to non-existent. Eru herself knew better than anyone else that challenging Saku's King Lear 3 was as absurd as the story of David and Goliath. But what of it? It wasn't completely impossible. It was worth a shot. Even if the odds were trillion or quadrillion to 1, she would save Saku at the cost of her life. And she would never regret that decision. Saku spat out more blood, but continued regardless, using a halo on Saku exposed to use it to endless retaliation. Only the ones involved truly understood the nature of their battle.
そこにいますか？聞こえていますか？サクはいつもスクールを守ると言っていました。立ってください。今がその時です。
She'd heard that she wouldn't survive the next attempt. Despite that, she tried again and again, bearing it and shedding tears of blood, and believing until the end.
エルがあなたの愛を引き上げてみせます。だからこんな悪夢は終わりにしましょう。さあ起きてください。おとなしサク。
どれだけ呼びかけたところで
届いてください。
そんなものが
届いてください。
何になると。
届いてください。
Oh! Saku covered her mouth with her hand. Blood leaked out between her fingers.
サク。
Seeing something in Saku's bloodied face, Eru, who felt both mystified and scared, muttered her name. Within the mix of crimson and pale white, we briefly saw the face we knew well. Everyone present understood that she was the one who wished to protect the Academy the most. What had she tried to say? Had she tried to call out to the small girl who'd stuck by her side for so long? Whatever it was, she failed to finish. The hand covering her mouth pressed down so hard it seemed to almost crush her face. The face between the fingers switched between the one we knew and the one we didn't. For a brief moment, the faces even mixed to create a single one, and Crimson flower bloomed. Not even we understood what had happened, even though we'd stared straight at it. She died. She fucking killed herself or something. Sharp wail resounded. Sakura rose like blood from her entire body, and collapsed into the bed of red petals she'd created. Jesus fucking Christ.
なぜこんなことに。
Yikes. It had crouched down next to Sakura. She took Sakura's blood-covered, powerless hand with the usual blank expression on her face. Merely watched, not saying a single word. Tomo recovered enough to stand by me, but she too remained silent.
どうしたの？何かあった？
わからない。
何かとても悪いことがあったよ。まるで悪い夢見てたみたい。
夢です。夢。全部夢なんです。
そういえば悪い夢見てたらエルが起こしてくれて、でもまた出てきそうだったからぶつけてやった。
なんてこと。自分をハローで攻撃したんですか？
夢覚めたら朝だから講義出ないと。
大丈夫です。まだ時間があります。昨日は夜更かしでしたから、もう少し休んでても大丈夫です。
You know what I've just realized? They left Taigi because they used the interface to call for help, but Saku has mentioned that she killed everyone in the research center. So no one could come to Taigi's rescue, so Taigi is probably also dead.
そっか。ならもう少しだけゆっくり時間なったらまた起こして。
はい、起こします。いつでもそうします。エルはサクと一緒にいるのです。サク、エルは今悲しいはずです。はずなのに、こんな時にもエルの目は乾いています。涙はどこへ行ったのですか？わかっています。エルは作り物で道具だから、本物の心ではないから、やっぱり悲しくもなくて。
I'm aware that there's like a
本物に
serious
はなれ
scene.
ない。偽物だから。
I'm aware that it's supposed to be like a serious tragic scene, but the mood is instantly ruined when you all look up, when something moves up in the corner of the screen. You look up and it's just like Undead Berserker is playing Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition again. I'm sorry. Sock's shaking hand combed Ada's hair in the same manner as she'd always done. And her suddenly colorless lips moved. She tried to say something again and again until finally.
そんなことないと思う。
Her hand fell and her lips closed. Sakura Tanashi didn't speak another word. Oh, it's like a really good CG. But it sure as fuck would not fucking go as a thumbnail. First up, YouTube will probably have a problem with all the fucking blood. Second off, I'm not an ass who uses those like such big spoilers as thumbnail. Actually, thinking again, there was a few of them in Tsuchi's Under Route for one, and I'm pretty sure I could find some others if I really decide to look through. You know, maybe I should just shut the fuck up and continue. Sounds like an idea. Eru's eyes started leaking something. Like a dam had burst. Droplets reflected silver in the moonlight, and it was something Eru Takazaki had never experienced before. The humans called them tears. Eru's voice went up an octave. Dave, as she shed more and more tears. Eru cried. She clung to Sokka's unmoving hand, refusing to let go, and presented her true self without any pretense. That moment, Eru discovered a brand new emotion. After a long, long time, her not-so-real heart came to understand the meaning of true sadness. Tears and scattered sobs continued without end. Her lament reached the skies themselves. Eru continued crying as if to shake off the loss and pain. She didn't hold back or show any signs of stopping, and instead wept like a newborn babe. A little over a month had passed since that long night. The incident during which Kurofuno Mikado and other officials died had cast a long shadow over the academy that hadn't lifted as of yet. For one, the lack of lecturers resulted in the cancellation of many lectures. Nearly half of them had become self-study sessions. There's still some left. The incident itself was dealt with behind closed doors. It had proved difficult, but possible due to the lack of dead students. Tenkobo Noble Academy continued to exist, though not in the same manner as before. A person no one had ever heard of appeared out of nowhere and quickly cleaned up the academy, then took Kurofuno's spot as the chairman. The new chairman issued a gag order to the few students who knew the details, and it ended with most of the acad and student body left in the dark. Oh, thank fucking
怪我な
God.
ら大丈夫さ。本当は医者からまだ動くなと言われているんだけどね。いつまでも寝ているわけにはいかないよ。
I actually do quite like Taiki, so I really don't want him to die. Want him to die. Blah, Taiki is hard.
父も時の先生もいなくなってしまった。これだけの騒ぎがあった以上、スクールも今までのように HMI を受け入れていくというのは難しくなるだろう。そのうちここもありきたりのごく普通の学園になってしまうのかもしれない。そうだね。ここがどんな場所でも必要としていた人たちはいた。ここがなくなってしまったら彼らはどこへ行けばいいのかな。ああ、僕はもう少し続けるつもりだ。僕にもずっと昔に誓ったことがある。たとえ道が遠くても最後までやり遂げるよ。
The dazzling sun warmed the world while cicadas sang their deafening song. Early summer had passed. The season had entered its true prime. The dazzling sky would eventually turn cloudy as autumn rolled in, paving the way for winter. So long as the world still turned, spring would arrive once more. To those who yet lived, time was like a river that flowed swift and sure. Imagine Sorako coming back and just having no fucking clue what happened. Eru walked, pushing a wheelchair. Considering her small frame, it was rather difficult for her. The wheels creaked every now and then due to the shift in force applied. Both Taiki and Sorako had insisted on helping her, but Eru refused to hand the role over to anyone else. Using her lack of physique, she slowly but steadily pushed the wheelchair and the one sitting on it. Occasionally, the uninformed students gave her strange looks, but those only ever lasted a second. Everyone knew that something had happened that resulted in numerous sacrifices. So they figured that the person in the wheelchair had been caught up in the accident and was hurt because of it. It was both right and wrong. The gag order in place, most of the students would never learn the truth. Eru also planned to never tell anyone about it.
どうです？何か必要なものはありますか？頭に椎茸でも植えましょうか。
She occasionally spoke to the one in the wheelchair, but responses were scarce. Eru leaned in to wipe the handicapped person's sweat with a handkerchief. She did it with a somewhat sad expression on her face that felt almost out of place. After the incident, Eru had started to change. She didn't seem too different on the surface, but her expression had grown far more vibrant. Feelings that had taken root inside her were extremely unreliable, and it was clear that it would take years for them to assume their proper form. Still, Eru had changed.
にしても重いですね。車椅子生活で太ったんじゃないですか？ブーブー。
No response. Eru watched her step as she pushed the wheelchair, which resulted in her spotting a familiar pair of feet. Not stopping, she purposefully ran them over.
痛い、やめたまえ。
おはようございます。L 式愛情表現です。
愛情表現か。そういうことならばいいとしよう。しかし、車椅子が揺れてしまうのではないかね。
おお、それは困りますね。成田のつま先はおぼろ昆布くらいペラペラになっても困りませんが。
向こうが透けそうだな。
Even if no one knew the truth of the incident, they knew of Mai and Eru's relationship. Of course they would, since the two greatest widows the Academy had to offer were a couple. Suddenly, the person in the wheelchair spoke up. This time or some. Or not. Huh.
おはよう。
I replied with the most affable smile I could muster. I was not expecting her to actually still be alive.
おはよう、サク。
Sakura Tanashi had survived, though she definitely wasn't well. Well, she destroyed herself using her halo. The wounds cut deep. Damage to her brain and nerves was particularly severe. It was so bad that she couldn't move without a wheelchair.
サク、名前は覚えましたか？成田。
正解だ。
The wounds had harmed far more than just her body, however. A few years' worth of her memories were wiped, so she no longer knew anything about the Academy or even Halos. She also spaced out a lot, like she had moments ago. Eru pushed her around in her wheelchair, refusing to rely on anyone else. She will never ask me for help when she had to bring the wheelchair out from the school building to the inner garden. Campus grounds were filled with hot air and bathed in dazzling sunlight. As we roamed around it, a girl with blonde hair that shone in the summer light approached us.
今日は調子が良さそうだね、サク。押すの手伝おうか？
いらないと言ってるでしょ。パンツ逆さ取りして成田の待ち受けに設定しますよ。
ごめんなさい。僕、どうしても気になって。
Soko, considered as ever, walked around Sakura and Eru. Sakura looked at her with strangely clear eyes.
ごめんなさい。あなたの名前、わからない。
僕は空子。桂木空子だよ。できればでいいので、覚えてくれると嬉しい。
Soko squinted as if bearing a burden. Saku's cloud of memories made it hard for her to remember people properly. For some reason, she instantly remembered Eru, then eventually remembered me. The others weren't as fortunate.
それから、俺が赤人玉緒だ。
Kamo joined in on our conversation.
検査も良好だったそうだし。よかったな、サク。
はい。
Until that day, Sakura had been kept in the research building where they went through strict testing. Her life depended on the results. I would have been surprised if they just disposed of her. The doctors involved with her said that the result was a miracle. Sakura Tadashi was completely stable. There was no sign of onslaught or slider syndromes. The reason for that, however, remained unknown. They suspected the damage to her brain had a secondary effect, but had no proof. If she'd been alive, no Yomise might have reached a different conclusion.
どうして治ったんだろうな。いや、すごい良かったことなんだけどよ。
ふむ。
He wrote my chin
オ
and
ンスロート
thought.
化をハローによる侵食と定義するならとても簡単な結論が出るだろう。
She destroyed her own halo. The testing had shown that Sakura Tanashi was no longer an HMI. She'd lost her halo. If it wasn't for that, if it wasn't that she was, and it wasn't that she was no longer able to activate it due to mental trauma either. It had vanished without a trace, and no tests showed its presence. Halos were a vague possibility in the field yet unexplored. The mysteries surrounding them were many, and minuscule things could change them severely. With an event like that happening, it wasn't strange for it to have vanished. The greatest HMI had been lost. I wouldn't have been surprised if the researchers who discovered that jumped off the rooftop due to grief.
HMI でなくなってオンスロードでもなくなった？
After hearing my conjecture, Eru nodded in understanding. It made sense to
も
her.
っとも奇跡の理由を考えるのは無粋なものだがね。
俺が悪いのか？
そういう成田も時々何か考え込んでるんですけどね。ま、どうせエロスなことばかりでしょうか。
まあまあまあ、こんな日に喧嘩しないで。
Tama was gritting her teeth, so Soroko had to calm her down. Past the hallway, we arrived at the academy's entrance.
このまま学園にいていいのかね。君は何か別にやることがあるのだろう。
I cautiously whispered that into Tamo's ear, making sure not to be overheard.
てめえ、いつから気づいてやがった。油断ならねえ。誰にも言うなよ。俺、もうすぐ姿を消すからよ。後腐れなく、綺麗さっぱりいなくなる。
I guess that Tamo had accomplished whatever her goal was.
偽学生の身分ともおさらばってわけだ。
偽物は。
ん？
I wanted to say something, but said against it.
なんでもないとも。
やっぱ、てめえは変なやつだ。
At the gate, we found a middle-aged woman. She was Sakura's mother. Her mind and life had stabilized, so Sakura had to leave the academy. Sad as it was, the academy was no place for a maiden who'd lost her halo. Besides, Sakura had taken many lives. That was an undeniable truth. I didn't know if the thing we'd encountered that night could be called Sakura. The Sakura we knew, the Sakura from that night, the Sakura in the wheelchair. Was one of them fake, or were they all of them actual parts of her? Fortunately, I had no way to discover solid answer. They dwelled Sakura and the murderer Sakura had vanished, leaving only this Sakura. There was blood on her hands, though she survived. Her sin was a grave one. However, Sakura didn't remember any of that. There were countless answers to the questions of whether she would be found guilty or not. I, Eru, Taigi, Tamo, the four of us who knew the truth, talked about it and decided we wouldn't speak a word of it to the girl in question. If there ever came a time when Sakura regained her memories of her sins and swore to face them, I planned to do whatever I could to help. However, I also thought that it was fine for her to forget everything and begin life anew, even if some didn't agree. Whatever the case, I knew for certain that even if she remembered everything, Sakura would never run away. So she needed to rest in order to stand on her own 2 feet once more.
それじゃあな。達者でやれよ、サク。
はい。
Tamo said that, but somewhat bashfully, then looked away. The response she received lacked any
さ
emotion.
ようなら、タク。手紙送るから、また、どこかで会えたらいいね。はい。
Sorako took Sakura's hand and shook it over and over. Despite the emotion from Sorako's side, Sakura seemed entirely unmoved.
新しい自分で新しい何かを見つけたまえ。
はい。
サク、サク。
His eyes seemed slightly wet.
キャラに合わない言動をするところでした。サク、外でも適当にやっていくとよろしかろうです。ベタに登校時間に目を覚まして、家を飛び出したりしてください。 はい。
Eru had swallowed her feelings and spouted her usual nonsensical words. Sakura seemed cold until the very end. Eventually, Eru handed Sakura's wheelchair over to her mother, who then gave her the bow and pushed Sakura away. Slowly but surely, Sakura left the academy for good.
Sakura!
Unable to hold it in any longer, Eru shouted. She shouted the name of the girl who'd owned her, the name of her closest friend. Tears rolled down her cheeks.
Sakura! いつまでも自分はサクのこと忘れませんから、サク！だから、サクも自分のことを。
The middle-aged woman turned around and gave Eru a slight bow. Her expression showed how troubled she was. Seemed to say Sakura was no longer Sakura.
Saku!
Eru continued shouting as Sakura passed the gate and vanished beyond the corner. Unable to find the right answer to say, I merely placed my hand on her shoulder. Eru and I weren't the only ones there. Tamo, Sorako, and Taigi also watched as Sakura disappeared from sight. She didn't turn around even once. Also, remember how I talked about how I've been constantly, basically spamming the opening for... sorry about that. For Osama ranking. That caused me to have, it proper stuck in my head. Truth and Light partially helped me get rid of that, but only because now I constantly, swap between having... having Hataka no Yusha and Truth and Light stuck in my head. Not the ideal solution, but hey, at least it's variety.
別れの時は泣いても構わないのだよ。
そんなの嫌です。涙は悲しいから流すものなんでしょ。でも、サクは生きているんです。ヘルのことを覚えていなくても、ここにいられなくなっても生きていてくれます。それだけで悲しくはありません。
Even after Sakura vanished, Eru continued to watch the gate. She resisted feeling sad about the parting, holding her voice in her throat as she stood tall like Sakura once had. Felt I saw tears welling up in her eyes, but that was surely my imagination.
人を人たらしめている心はどこまでも偽物かもしれないが、それがこんなにも素晴らしいものを与えてくれる。不思議だとは思わないかね。エルが機械だとしても、突き詰めれば人間も肉でできた分子機械だ。
成田、サクはどうなるんでしょう。
確かにサクはもうサクではないのかもしれない。だがサクで亡くなったことは救いでもあると思う。人だけではないよ。この世界は何もかもが変わっていく。我々はそれを受け入れて生きていかなければならない。
自分もうエルではないのかもしれない。
そうかもしれない。それはおそらく私も同様だ。
Kurofune had died. Narita had lost his reason to live. The oath of vengeance he'd sworn so long ago. Only one target remained, but due to all the recent happenings, I'd lost the desire to hunt him down. I wouldn't have hesitated before. Instead, I would have acted immediately to accomplish my goal. And Shinri Narita who'd lost sight of what he had to do. Surely it wasn't Shinri Narita. Kurofune was gone. So it was Tokino Yomise. Sakura had left. Tanamao would soon follow. What would I do then? That was a foolish question. I had to decide that for myself. Thinking of the image of Sakura as she'd left, I wondered where to go. Suddenly my dull senses realized the obvious.
エル。
成田、余計な慰めなどは必要ありませんが。
そうではないよ。
The fact that Eru had to return to her usual self brought a smile to my face.
我々は偽物だとサクが言っていたのを覚えているかね。あの夜の魔こそあるべき姿なら。なるほど。HMI は不完全な偽物でしかない。
あれが本物なら自分、本物よりかっこいい偽物でいいです。
君はどうやって本物と偽物を区別する？
一番最初のものが本物じゃないですか？
例えば人類の文明、科学などは何もかもが自然の模倣だ。最初だけが本物というなら、ある意味全てが偽物。つまり我々は偽物であることを武器に世界の支配者になり上がったのだよ。
じゃあ成田も偽仲間ですね。
私は最初から偽学生だと思う。昔狼に育てられた少女というものがいた。発見されたその子は姿こそ人だったが、まるで狼だったそうだ。
それは
人の心を持っていなかったということだよ。人の心、愛や悲しみを本能だというものもいる。だが私は心もまた学んでいくものだと思う。偽物も時には本物が思いもよらぬことをする。黒船の理事長室のプレートのように。
あの変な記号っぽいやつ？
Yes, the pioneer plaque, which represented an unfulfilled dream.
あれは星の彼方に自分たちの心を託して投じたものだ。いつか誰かが拾ってくれることを祈って。本物もそんなことまでは思いもよらなかっただろうね。黒船の生き方も考え方も私は認めないが、一つだけ同意できるところがある。
何ですか？世界を支配してやるぜとかですか？
HMI を可能性と呼んだことだ。
He claimed that possibilities were something we made ourselves. Mali wasn't decided by whether something was real or fake. The action of those with a strong will, in fulfilling a promise and saving Sakura was a perfect example.
私もエルもサクも誰も同じだよ。それが言いたかった。
意味不明ですよ。
そうだろう。私の思考は深淵ということだ。
Eru laughed for the first time in days. Couldn't tell whether she was infected by my smile or not. Yeah, that's the thumbnail. I like that smile. That smile is adorable. Whatever the case, we both laughed for no apparent reason. Whether Eru's smile was fake or real or fake, saying it made me happy. It was more than enough.
だから我々は皆今の一瞬一瞬を大切に生きていくのだよ。
ポエマー黙ってろ。
I decided to reevaluate my motivation. If that reignited my passion, I planned to fulfill all that remained of my solemn oath. What would I do after that? The answer to that question seemed rather obvious. I would be reborn as a new Shinri Narita. Even if one way of life had been closed off, as long as I drew breath, I had to find a new path forward. As he burst into laughter, Tamo spoke up.
お前ら何言ってんだ？
Like those two are just standing like, what the fuck is going on over there?
マンアフターマンの話です。
Soraku and Taigi joined in.
何事も笑って送り出すというだろう。
ニュアンスが違うと思う。
Sakura had left, but the things she'd wished to protect most still remained.
今何かカッコつけたキモいことを考えていたでしょう。
無論だ。私は常にかっこいい。
処置なしです。
No, it kind of fit that she fucking chimes in at the end like that. Fucking suits her, really.
これはとある男と女の誕生の物語である。
Ugh. Weird. Broken puppet. Achievement unlocked. Hint corner? Yes. Please enlighten me.
ペルシャマンショー海賊版。
今週のびっくりドッキリメイド。東はハワイ諸島から西はハワイ諸島まで全世界どこでも生中継でとってもベリーグー。ハローレディの両親ペルーシャマンショーのコーナーでございます。クリアできないあなたのハートに従ってヒントと引き換えに魂を奪っちゃうぞと、まあつかみは良好。本日は奥島市内で開催中のサブカルイベント街大好きの会場からお送りしています。うりゃー、これはエルルン、一体どこから？アニソンと薄い芸のあるところ、自分はどこにでも現れるのです。
No jokes though, I need to go. I'm gonna go. Pause real quick. Be right back. Alright, I'm back.
何もご自分のルートの後なのに出なくても。何かおっしゃいましたか？いえいえ、何も。まさか筆者の出番を奪おうと企んでいるのでは。さて、エルルンルートはまっとうに進んでいれば3つ目。そろそろ慣れてきたかなというところで、打って変わってミステリー風味。犯人はどこにいる？お前だ、服を脱げ。今の笑うところじゃありませんです。嫌ですね、お客様。ちなみに奥島のある T 県は古くは流刑地だった土地柄だったので、中央から排斥された血筋が流れ着くことがままあったわけです。高崎もそういうもともと中央にいたけど流されてきた血筋の一つだったんですね。うんうん、なるほど、ためになる。ではメイドさん、そろそろ次回のヒントを。エルルンルートをクリアするとどこかに選択肢がピポッと生えているかもです。さあレッツチャレンジ。どうしてもバッドエンドループから抜けられないという場合、コンフィグ画面の変化をよく確認してみましょう。復習者として行き過ぎちゃうと、それはそれで別のエンディングに行ってしまいますからね。それではまた次回もエルーシェマンショーアニカラ版をお楽しみに。タイトル変わってる
There we go. That's nice. Yes, I could have probably just like quickly gone through that, but hey, man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Anyways, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. That's been Eru-Route. Next time, moving into Saku's. Wondering how the fuck they're gonna handle that. Considering, you know, actual mass murder, actual serial murder this time. Like, we recently had the whole talk, like, mass murder, serial murder, difference. Saku is the serial murder. In that ending, Narita is the mass murderer. That's... we learn something new every day. That's what Sesame Street. I don't think Sesame Street would cover shit like that. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this one and see you next time. Bye bye. I know I make these faces every single time.